everyone. Could I ask you all to please stand for the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to tonight's Town Board meeting, November 26, 2024. First item on our agenda, we have a presentation to a special young lady. I would ask Haley Schott, is that proper pronunciation? Haley Schott? Myself and the Town Board would like to recognize Haley, a Westlake Middle School student, and the first recipient of the town's Celebrating Our Youth program. Haley has been volunteering at Rockefeller State Park Preserve since 2017, logging several hundred hours. She created Haley's Charity Art Auction, which has raised over $14,000 for the preserve to date. The funds were used to purchase 2 all-terrain wheelchairs for park guests. You can see HaleyScott.com for more information on that. The town applauds Haley for giving back to the Mount Pleasant community in a very special way. So congratulations, Haley, on behalf of the town of Mount Pleasant. We also have our special Assemblywoman, Mary Jane Shemsky, would like to present you with something.
Sure.
All right. As the state representative who represents the Rockefeller Preserve, the kind of work that you do there to make programming available so people can appreciate and enjoy more deeply what it is they're seeing there is very, very important. And we thank you very much for doing it. And one thing I do want to say about your artwork and your art sales. Many of the greatest artists of the last couple hundred years did not make $15,000 and $2,024 in their lifetimes. So your work must really be something. I look forward to seeing it someday. But for now, I just want to thank you for a job well done and helping our park be as good as it can be. Congratulations.
It's wonderful to be able to celebrate him. Thank you, Helen.
As Supervisor mentioned, the website is HaleySchott.com. You can find it on our agenda. It's really cool. Haley, I looked at the website. Very, very impressive for an 8th grader. You have a lot of bright things ahead of you, so congrats again and thank you.
I also want to thank Nick DiPaolo, who's in charge of the guidance department up at Westlake High School. Nick helped us initiate this, and we'll be doing this as much as we can. It's always nice to recognize, especially our youth. Next thing on our agenda tonight is public hearings. The first public hearing is for the preliminary 2025 budget. I don't see Noreen. Is Noreen here? Oh, there she is. Oh, you. Oh. Noreen is our new controller. And Noreen is just going to give you a little background on where we're at with the budget.
Good evening, Honorable Town Supervisor and Honorable Town Board. Thank you for having me to discuss with you the 2025 preliminary budget. Just to introduce myself, my name is Noreen McGinty, and I am the new controller for the town. To provide a little bit of background, the town begins the budget process during the summer months. Supervisor Fulgenzi and I conduct meetings with all the department heads to discuss their plans for the upcoming year and to review the status of the current year. From there, much time and effort is put into compiling the tentative budget, which is filed with the town clerk by October 30th. The town board is then presented with the tentative budget for review no later than November 10th. Once the town board has reviewed the tentative budget and any revisions are made, the preliminary budget is prepared and filed with the town clerk prior to the public hearings. Per New York State Office of the State Controller, the public hearing must be conducted on or before December 10th, and the budget must be adopted by December 20th. The town supervisor and town board typically schedule 2 public hearings to allow the public to have ample opportunity to ask any questions or voice any concerns. The preliminary budget is made available via the town's website and the town clerk office. Based on the continual rising prices of goods and services, it has been the goal of Supervisor Fulgenzi, the town board, and the department heads to sharpen our pencils and find ways to cut back on expenditures without reducing any services. As expected, a large portion of the town's budget is fixed expenditures, such as salaries, benefits, and debt service payments. For reference, there is an estimated increase of 12% for health insurance costs and 16.6% for ERS and 29.7% for PFRS, which are retirement costs. The town must also reflect the various special districts in its budget, for example, the fire protection districts, ambulance districts, and library districts, for which we have no control over. All factors considered, I believe Supervisor Fulgenzi, the town board, and all department heads have accomplished their goal of creating a lean budget, but also efficient. The town is presenting a 2025 preliminary budget of $64.9 million in total expenditures. This is $1.4 million more than the 2024 adopted budget of $63.5 million. The town is budgeting to use approximately $2.29 million of fund balance in addition to budgeting conservatively for expected revenues. This would result in the 2025 tax levy to be $33.7 million, approximately $229,000 more than the allowable levy of $33.4 million. This translates to an increase of less than $50 per household. For the upcoming year, the town will be taking a conservative approach to spending. We are not planning on borrowing money unless it's absolutely necessary, and will continue to search for grant funding to offset any budgeted expenditures. The town has completed a tremendous amount of work over the past several years, many improvements throughout town, and intends to continue to provide the same level of service going forward. Please keep in mind the town's tax only encompasses approximately 20% of your total tax bill. The remainder of your bill is made up for the school district's tax and the county tax, for which the town simply acts as a collection on behalf of. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Noreen. At this time, the public hearing is open. Anyone who wishes to ask a question about the budget, you're welcome to do so, and we'll do our best to answer your questions.
If you could please sign in before you speak, and then when you get to the mic, just state your name and address. You could come up. Do I need to read the notice? Do I need to read the notice?
Yeah, before you start, just so everybody knows what the notice states that went out
This is the preliminary.
for the preliminary budget.
Not the levy. Not the
Right.
Okay. Notice of public hearing by the town board of the town of Mount Pleasant to consider the preliminary 2025 town budget. Please take notice that the annual preliminary budget of the town of Mount Pleasant for the year 2025 has been completed and filed in the office of the town clerk of the town of Mount Pleasant, that the town board of said town will, at a meeting thereof to be held at the town hall located at 1 Town Hall Plaza in the hamlet of Valhalla, county of Westchester, state of New York, on the 26th day of November 2024 at 7 p.m., hold a public hearing thereupon and review said budget, and any person may be heard in favor of or against the budget as compiled, or for or against any item or items therein contained. Please take further notice that the preliminary 2025 budget is available for review in the town clerk's office. Please take further notice that the proposed salaries with stipends of each member of the town board, the supervisor, town clerk, and superintendent of highways therein are set forth as follows. Town board members, $30,910 each per annum. Supervisor, $204,119 per annum. Town clerk, $110,682,000, and superintendent of highways, $126,282. Dated Town of Mount Pleasant, November 13th.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, my name is Gal Ophir. I'm a resident. I did sign in.
Thank you.
Questions with regard to those figures you gave. Could you give the percentage of year-over-year increases?
The management, for all management, is 3%. We try to keep it the same as what the union raises are, so management gets the same as what's been stipulated in the union contract. Generally, it's 3%. It is 3% this year.
Thank you, thank you. And what is the percentage increase for the staff as it relates to those healthcare increase costs of 16.9%? Where I work, when the increases go on for healthcare, employees' contributions often go up. What is your increase in contributions?
Well, the contribution for each employee does go up if the rates go up. So if all employees pay 25% in their salary towards health care. So if 25% of that new increase, whatever it is, that's what they have to pay. So
Got
it goes up.
You got it. So if it goes up significantly, that only 25% is absorbed by the employees, no matter what.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, that helped.
You.
I would like to voice my opposition to the increase in the budget, in particular as it relates to compensation. I have been a resident of this town for over a dozen years. I have been disappointed with the services that I've been receiving. I've actually called your office in particular, Mr. Supervisor, multiple times this year. I was deflected by your EA multiple times. I had to spend 4 months clearing up a dangerous situation on my street with a power line issue. I called multiple times. You never called me back.
You never
found-
received any calls from my office.
I only was able to get a response from the EA when I called directly. Multiple times. She picked up the phone, she responded, but that was it. And it took months to receive it. Now, in my mind, that is underperforming. And when you underperform, you don't get an outsized raise. Full stop.
Okay.
And I've had the similar issue, by the way,
You
with
do
the...
understand that we have no control over the power lines themselves, right?
I understand that you could have called me once, spent 10 minutes as a constituent. How are things going? How can I help? You didn't do it once.
Okay.
You didn't follow up. Your EA didn't follow up once. I had to call multiple times. That is poor service. I could do the same thing with the town roads, where I had potholes and I had to call over years before my road finally got repaired. Years. I was dodging potholes driving.
I'm sorry, what street did you say you live on?
Country Club Lane. And as it turned out, only part of the, what do you call it, the curb piece was repaired, but not by my house.
Okay.
So underperforming, outsized raises doesn't make sense to me. I vote against.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have his name, address?
I have the address, the name.
Okay.
Good evening, Supervisor and Board. My name is Marie Wayne, Hawthorne resident. I have a couple of questions. I didn't hear from the first speaker. What is the percentage that our taxes will go up if this passes? I couldn't hear that part.
Total increase with breaking the cap is 3.5%.
3.5% of which tax is that? The town tax?
Town tax.
Does that tax have anything to do with our police force?
Yes.
So that police force that our non-for-profit schools use has a big impact on that number, right?
Well, the school resource officers that we had to hire for each school, we hired 3 school resource officers, which the school pays 60%, we pay 40%.
So we pay 40% of the non-for-profit schools that are running in our town out of our pockets, so it's out of everyone's pocket here. I'm not sure why. I feel like I don't want to pay their police force at all, not all. And not only that, the EMTs, when we had our last meeting last year, The EMTs expressed concern about what they have to go through. They are volunteers. They're not being paid. They're volunteers. They're young people, or whoever they are. They're young people who are putting their life in danger because we know how dangerous those schools were and are and still are. We've seen things happen just over.
Are you speaking about Pleasantville Cottage School?
I'm sorry?
Are you speaking of Pleasantville Cottage School?
I'm speaking of whatever non-for-profit schools are running through our police force.
No, we're not, we do not patrol Pleasantville Cottage School.
What about
Only West Lake
JCC?
High School? No,
Cedar Knolls is closed. Well, I mean, the school is not, but we don't have anybody up there.
no.
But what about JCC? Don't they run through our police force? They use our police force.
Well, we have to provide police service to them, yes.
But why do we have to pay for that when they have ample funds on their balance sheet of like $100 million?
Then it
And
makes a
somehow
question.
we're paying into that, and it's not really fair to us.
We've been in conversation with the state for a number of years trying to get that.
Number? No, I've seen people die. Over 30 years I've been doing this, and I've seen people go to their death fighting this, because it's a big issue that we're paying for this, and they have, if you look at their books, they haven't filed their taxes, and at least according to New York State Charities in the past 2 years, but if you look at prior tax returns, they have over $100 million, of which belongs to us and are the residents of our town. And I feel like we can't go on what is the state doing, because they're the ones that are making this happen, we know that. So whatever they're doing, it's always like, oh, well, the streets aren't paved, oh, well, that's a state issue. This is a state issue too, but they're allowing it to happen. They're using our money. It's direct. We can see it, it's obvious, and it's not fair. I don't know why it continues for so long, but like I said, I've seen people go to their death trying to fight this, and it's not fair. And on another subject, which I'm curious about, is will Amazon be paying taxes?
For sure. They're on the,
When will they start?
they started.
They started?
Yeah.
So I'm sure they're paying a lot. I mean, that basically is going to take over all the little stores in the area. They're huge. It's a tremendous establishment there.
Yep.
So wouldn't that kind of go into help our situation?
It does. A little over $1 million goes to the school. About under $600,000 goes to the town.
Okay,
It will not, we won't see that until the April 25 collection.
Right.
To get fully assessed.
right,
So we don't see that yet, but we will be getting a portion of that
okay.
25.
And I think when we met recently, I asked you about the school taxes, and you had said that the school taxes that we pay don't go to any of the non-for-profit schools.
No.
But yet, deep down, it does affect what we get from the state. I have a feeling, because they're paying for those schools, the superintendent's making like $400,000. None of our superintendents, and that's a guess number, but it's pretty high. None of our superintendents are making that kind of money.
No.
They're just in it for the money. They're not in it for those kids. We know that. That's a long time thing where those kids are being abused for money. And we're paying for it. I feel like we're all paying for it, and it's not fair.
I know.
And then last year, or the year of the election, there was talk of a surplus that the town had. And I know that, of course, we had to use that for that court case, but
No,
is there a
it's not true.
surplus, and can we use it?
We've always maintained a fund balance in the town. During the COVID situation, we were one of the towns that did not have to borrow money to be able to cover us through that COVID situation. We used our fund balance to help cover us. Every year, we have taken a portion of fund balance to put towards taxes to help keep them. We've been under the 2% cap for about 10 years. So this is the first time, I think in 2013, I think that budget broke the cap.
Isn't there, given the economy, is there any way we can use those funds? And also, on another question regarding those funds, how are they being, I guess, stored, or what kind of earnings are they making? Because that's a lot of money to be having sit around.
I believe it's in a savings account. We can't like invest them or anything like that, but it's in the savings.
I wonder what kind of, I'd be curious, I know you can't answer it now, but I'd be curious to find out, because some of the savings accounts are like 0 or 0.2% or 0.5, but some of them are 4.5.
I think we usually list it at every other meeting.
Yeah.
I think it was about 4 point something at the
Oh,
last
okay,
meeting.
that's good. So would the board consider, would the board consider using any of our surplus, since, I mean, the economy is bad, we know how much it costs things have gone up substantially in the last couple of years. Would the board consider using the surplus to
We
cover?
did use some surplus for this budget. Like I
She
said-
wasn't here when Noreen spoke, so.
Oh, okay.
No, I didn't hear,
Yeah, that's what I was
what-
telling him.
right. What percentage was used of the surplus? Or how much directly?
$2.9 million is being used.
2.29.
What percentage is that of the surplus?
I would have to ask our controller that. I don't have that in my head. But believe me, we all pay taxes in town. The lower we keep the taxes, the better it is for everyone. So we're not here to break the cap. Like I said, we've maintained it for about 10 years. And because of the way, we all know what costs have gone up the
Right,
past couple of years.
yes.
We are all feeling that pain. So we did our best. We started off over 7% over in the budget. We cut every department as low as we could go, and I've asked all of our department heads to do more with less. And this
Yes.
year, even though we may have a budget for 25, I still want them all to cut whatever they can throughout the year so that we can build up our fund balance again for next year. So
Okay.
I think everybody, department heads are not happy with the cuts, but we're all not happy paying more taxes, so.
No, and we do have a good crowd here tonight, but I feel like it would have been double or more had this not been this week when Thanksgiving is a couple of days away. And
We don't have much of a choice.
I know that,
I was
but
supposed to be in South Carolina with my son who's got
see,
stage 4
just
cancer.
that alone, I'm sorry.
So I didn't want to be here either tonight, but we knew how important this was, so we're all here.
is there any way to schedule this in the future, say a month ahead of time? I know you guys are really busy, but I feel like it would give all of us time, especially in your situation, and everyone else has other situations that they're dealing with. They're going to get their kids from school. You know, people have company coming. I have Australians in town. I have Italians in town. I have, a lot going on. So I was hoping.
There are set dates. You cannot schedule it too early, you can't schedule it too late. I think by December, 20th, is the final where it has to be submitted.
There will be
You have to
another
adopt
second, there will
it.
be a second.
Yeah, we're
public hearing
meeting again December 10th.
But also,
This is not going to be closed. We're going to continue the meeting.
Okay, I'll give someone else a chance to talk, but I'd like to leave with the final words that at some point, I really feel that our police force should not be, we should not be paying into that for a company that has $100 million on their books.
Well, you
I'd like to just leave it at that.
You won't get an argument from
Well,
anybody
but
here.
but where can we go with that? Because I would like to see that go somewhere.
Well, at one point, there was a suggestion we should charge the state. My problem with that is once you get paid by an agency like that, they control you. And that's something I
But they
didn't
do
want.
they control they're controlling this right now.
Well,
Let's just say that.
we've been fighting this for 10 years, so.
10, more than that.
Well, I mean, personally,
30, maybe
Myself and
30
Chief.
plus that I know of, personally. All right, thank you for your time.
you're welcome.
Carl, to clarify one issue you mentioned, the school resource officers are in the public school system. There are no school resource officers in the private schools or in any not-for-profit school, and we're not paying into that school.
Right.
The police department patrols and it goes on calls when there's calls there, so just so that's clear for the record.
Thank you. Yes, did you sign in?
Good evening, Mr. Supervisor and Town Board. My name is Jonathan Goldsmith. I am a resident of Hawthorne. I'm a little bit nervous to be here today, but I feel like it's part of my duty to be here to discuss this budget with this board. I noticed that over the past couple years, we've seen a decrease in our end-of-year fund balance. In 2022, we had about $20 million, and it looks like at the end of this year, we're projected to be around $10 million. What strategy are we going to be using to sort of replenish that balance? Because it seems like we've been in that high numbers, like about double where we are now for quite some time.
We've been blessed with the fact of corporations coming into town, remodeling, redeveloping, and contributing to our tax base, which all helps us to maintain the fund balance. The past few years, it's been a little bit tighter. We've seen development, but not like we've seen in the past, Regeneron, PepsiCo, and all that. Like I said, we tighten our belt to try to reserve as much as we can in the fund balance, but like I said before, These are taxpayer dollars. I don't want to hold on to $20 million of taxpayer dollars. I don't want my money held by the town either. So we had to find a balance. We're required to hold a certain amount by law. We have to contain a certain amount as a reserve. If people retire, sometimes there's payouts and stuff like that. You have to maintain a certain amount minimum. And then, like I said before, when you had a situation like COVID, a lot of municipalities had to borrow money. We didn't. We made it through that without being hurt.
Okay, could you clarify what the minimum balance is?
I'd have to ask our controller. I don't have those numbers.
Okay, fair enough. I also noticed that in the past few years, we've had a excess over revenue that has been in the, well, in 2020 was 1 million, but understandable for COVID. 2021 was about $650,000. 2022 was about another $1 million. 2023 was 2.6 million. And this past year looks like we're about to hit 5.7 million, almost $5.8 million. Do we anticipate to have the same type of excess spending where we're spending more than the revenue that the town is bringing in 2025?
I think if you looked around town, you'll notice the amount of the miles of roads that have been redone. We got hit with a tremendous amount of drainage issues in town because of the tremendous amount of rain that we've had over the past few years. Affected all of our drainage system in this town, and we're slowly trying to replace them a little at a time. It would be a tremendous expense to redo all of our drainage in town. We're still waiting for a report for Hawthorne, where the water down on the lower areas has been building up, and it's hard to get that drainage out of the area. A tremendous amount of money goes into those type of things. That's our biggest expense, is road work and drainage work.
Were these all unexpected expenses this year? Because they didn't appear to be in the budget last year.
Some of the drainage was unexpected, yes.
Okay.
A good part of it was unexpected.
And what about the revenue side? It looks like our projected revenue was about $3.5 million higher than it actually was in 2024. Is there a reason that our revenue was $3.5 million below what was expected?
When you do a budget, you try to anticipate what kind of revenue you can bring in from like building permits and stuff like that. Some of them do not move forward. Some of them will get delayed, possibly a year. So sometimes you get a shortfall on that.
Okay, so do we expect to make up that revenue difference in 2025?
We always hope to, yes.
Because I've noticed a trend in the last couple of years that we've missed our revenue target by usually a single-digit percentage. So the year-over-year revenue growth that was, I think, estimated was about 4.8%, but what we actually got was 1.17. The year before that was 6.9. We actually got 5%. It looks like this upcoming year we're expecting to need about 2%, or estimating about 2%, but it looks like we really need about 8% based on the trajectory that we've been going in. And it makes me think that the bottom line number is off by a pretty significant magnitude between about $1.5 million to $4.5 million. So do we have some cuts in place that will make sure that we actually stay within this tax cap, or we're just going to take more money out of the fund balance to make up the deficit?
We have to stay within the tax cap. We base our revenue on sales tax, mortgage tax, which is very fluid. Mortgage tax has dropped off considerably. We thought that would be higher than, turns out a lot of people are paying cash for homes, so there's no mortgage tax involved there. Mm-hmm. Sales tax, like I said, fluctuates depending on sales. So those aren't hard numbers you can work with.
Yeah.
There's some variations there.
But this is just an estimate based on averages, right, from the last couple of years.
Yep.
Even all the way, did my averages all the way through 2018. And even with the minimum number and the average number, it looks like we're off by 1.6 to $4.5 million or $5 million almost.
I'd have to see those numbers. That seems a little high, but.
Okay, I'll be happy to share these with you after the.
I would like that, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I just So my name is Amanda from Sherman Avenue in Hawthorne. I'm a resident and I'm also the supervisor's executive assistant. I don't know if Gall is still here, but I heard some comments that were made about me not returning phone calls. And since we all do receive a 3% raise, I just wanted to give some background on the situation. So to start, the holdup was on the utility side. There are many.
Excuse me?
Can we wait for later on that? Thank you.
So sorry. So the holdup was on the utility side. I have contacts at Verizon, Altice, and all of those. So I go out to them and try to partner to get resident emails rectified sooner because pole issues take a long time. For example, I've been trying to work to get the Chelsea Bridge Street fixed where the sidewalks are and there's those long wires. So I'm still working with the utility companies on those. So in reference to the disparaging comments made about me, I usually let my work stand for itself, but I felt compelled to speak about it. I do also have emails with Gall. I followed up with him every time I spoke with the utility company. I would be happy to provide that to anyone that would like to look at it. And I also would be happy to share emails from other residents that said they never would have been able to get any issues rectified with the polls had I not been involved. So I'm more than happy to share any emails like that with the board. And I do have an email chain with Gall every time I got in touch with the utility company. And I can't help if Con Ed's not going to get out there, or if Altice has to get out there, or LightPath, but I do try, and I follow up with the residents. I gave him a point of contact. He actually did call me one time, and I got them out there very quickly, and I think I still have that voicemail saved. And then, when it was taking a little bit longer, because those field representatives went to another site, that's when he got very impatient and was upset. So again, I usually let my work stand for myself, but since we're talking about budget and raises, I'd be happy to show you any of those documentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For the record, I think that's the first time I received a complaint about our office.
Good evening. My name is Christine Clayton. I'm a resident at 901 New Broadway in Sleepy Hollow. Pleased to be with you here today. Number one, my first question is, what does the town of Mount Pleasant do for the village of Sleepy Hollow? Can you please specify what services you provide us? Thank you.
Jim, you got a minute, please? I had this discussion with a trustee this morning regarding, there's a lot of misunderstanding about.
Please clarify it.
Well, we intend to, yes. Jim is our assessor, and we actually had a discussion about this earlier today.
I hope you won't take my 5 minutes away, though.
No.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Basically, the town provides court services.
Do you
Do you want to go to the mic? Maybe? Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, the town's taxes in the villages cover costs the town has for providing court services when necessary, assessment services, because we assess all the village properties as well as the town properties.
Speak in the mic.
Sorry. The town assesses properties in the villages as well as the town, so that is part of the cost. The court I mentioned, finance as well, the controllers, a portion of the expenses that the town has to provide services for the village are paid through that. Okay, don't have much less to say. At any rate, those are the general services. They also provide support for ambulance and through contract basis for the various ambulance services in the villages, so Pleasantville Ambulance, Sleepy Hollow Ambulance, there's a Valhalla Ambulance, of course, that's not a village, and the other town ambulance services as well, okay?
You're going to give me the mic? Okay. Thank you. So here's my next question. And I apologize, I don't have my numbers right in front of me. What is the cost of the outside counsel for the voting rights civil rights case? What's the town of Mount Pleasant paying out to outside counsel for that case?
First of all, we have, in our budget, we have for legal services. Much of that is drawn through that part of the budget. Our insurance company is picking up a large part of the tab also, because we have insurance to cover us for litigation. So the exact numbers we don't have, we're still in litigation, although right now we're on a stay.
So are you trying to say that the town of Mount Pleasant budget is not paying for legal services for that lawsuit?
Not all of it, I just said.
What percentage? What percentage of the
I don't
cost
know
would you say?
Probably 50% is paid.
50%.
But-
Is that amount of money, does that exceed the amount that you are asking to exceed the tax cap? Does the amount that you are paying, that 50% to that lawsuit, does that exceed the increase in taxes that you're proposing ahead of the tax cap?
That was not part of the increase.
So you're saying that it does not. The amount that the town of Mount Pleasant is paying directly for that lawsuit is less than the amount you're asking to exceed the tax cap.
Yes.
So you must know how much you're spending if you can answer that question for me.
I don't have those calculations in front of me.
Well, I left my email, and I'm hoping that you will send that amount, because you
Yeah.
clearly know if you can answer that question.
Excuse me?
You clearly know if you could answer that question to me right now. If you could answer that
If I had
question.
the numbers in front of me, I would.
Well, it seems like that should be somebody's job. If you are the supervisor and you were asking for a raise, you should have those numbers for us. Secondly, will you forego the raises to your salaries due to the increase in this tax cap you are proposing on this community?
The town board has discussed that, which affects all management, starting from lieutenants all the way up.
I'm asking a yes or no question. Will you forego your raises if you have to exceed the tax cap?
We did a calculation to see if foregoing management raises would eliminate the 1.5%, and it would not.
So, that's interesting. I'll dig some deeper into those numbers. I understood and appreciated that you said you feel our pain, that like a lot of Americans, you felt the pain of the last 2 years. I'm sorry. People who vote themselves, public servants who vote themselves an increase in salary are not feeling our pain. Okay? I would like to, on behalf of Sleepy Hollow residents who are here, and some of whom are preparing for Thanksgiving and could not be here, I want to voice my opposition to your budget, to proposing to increase. As you could hear from your assessor, we do not benefit from the services at all. As far as what I've seen, I've lived in this area for 20 years. And I adamantly oppose you exceeding the tax cap when I believe, from what I've understood, a lot of that money is going to outside counsel to fight a lawsuit for the voting rights lawsuit. I think it's absolutely a disgrace in public service.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. I'm Marilyn Flater. I live on Sleepy Hollow Road in Briarcliff, I guess, is the post office, but I'm in the town of Mount Pleasant. I too was going to ask about the hundreds of thousands of dollars that we're going to pay for legal counsel, particularly because I was at both of the public meetings. There were 2 public meetings, right? I was at both of them, and the thing that struck me the most was how divided the town was. There were people who were passionately opposed to this and people who were passionately against it. And I came away thinking, this is very interesting. We are, that we are living out this divide. And when I got home and then I heard the experts that you all had hired who said, do not file this lawsuit. It is a loser, you're going to lose. And so I went home thinking that surely this would be a lively discussion behind closed doors. And if I'm not mistaken, it was a unanimous decision to pursue the court case and spend this money, which I have to say, I think of it as my money. I think that my money is involved, and I do not feel represented, since I was one of the people thinking, don't pour our money into a legal case that you're going to lose. I never heard a real rationale from you all about why it was so important, but I can guess that a town that is 100% Republican, that votes itself raises, is not going to be debating this to the extent that your constituents are. And I'm part of that constituency, and I think that there are a lot of us, and we don't feel represented. I do not feel represented by a town that is pouring that kind of money into the pockets of lawyers who exist to fan the flames of things. I mean, I think the lawsuit was brought in order to open a discussion about the fact that this is one of the weirdest towns that I can think of, because it's made up of suburbs, it's made up of towns and villages, and it's far-flung, and, you know, it took me over 20 minutes to drive here from my town. That's how far away I am. And that's really how far away I feel, too. I am also one of the people who live near a proposed development. There are several huge developments that I've seen come to fruition in this town, and I've heard the nearby residents just come and pour their hearts out, complain, because the quality of their life has plummeted, the quality and the value of their homes is plummeting, and we do not feel heard. And that, to me, adds up to a real problem in terms of my representatives asking for more money to do something that I think a whole lot of my fellow residents feel is not a good use of our resources, especially if we're cutting services, eliminating things, tightening up the departments, and yet also giving raises. I mean, to me, this does not make sense. And I say this respectfully. I have had really lovely interactions when I've come here to town hall. People have been very attentive. But when it comes to the big expenses and it comes to the big decisions, I do not feel represented, and I do not feel that this budget represents my values.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a couple things. When we were first hit with this case, we all agreed it was unconstitutional. Recently, a judge agreed with us, this is up in Newburgh, that it is unconstitutional. I feel it was worth the fight, and the town board members agreed. I don't feel it's right that anybody should be pushed to a point where they have to be unconstitutional, and it was very wrong. What's going on? When you said this is all Republican town, it's not. It's 2-1 Democrats. So maybe some Democrats are voting for the Republicans on this board. So, and I appreciate their support. We try to, you say that we're cutting services. I don't know where you see that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was referencing what you were saying about all the departments were tightening their belts.
Yeah, and that's a good economic way of going about things, tightening the belt. There's nothing wrong with that, trying to do more with less, being more efficient, and that's our whole purpose here.
And foregoing a raise, I would think, would be a very obvious way to cut the money. I haven't had a raise in so long. I mean, my business has just gone flying out the window. And so I am looking at an erosion year after year after year. You know, I'm on Social Security, and that raise is not nearly as handsome. as the one that I saw here. I
What
mean,
percentage do you get on Social Security? I'm curious.
I think it was 3%.
Right, so we're
I'm-
doing
it's
3%
very-
across the board
Cost of living.
as a cost of living increase for management, because it's very hard to strip raises from, I know we're public servants and our management are public servants, and it's just very, in a time where their costs at home are up 20, 30, 40% on certain items, sometimes more than that, it's a very tough balance to strike for us as trustees, and at the same time as leaders. And so you're getting 3% on Social Security, and
2.5.
2.5,
Thank you.
yeah, 2.5.
I think as a public servant, it is a very difficult thing to ask for a raise from people, to ask for an increase in our tax contribution while you are taking a raise. I think that's a bad look, and I know that your costs are going up. You should tighten your belt. That's what we've had to do, and I think, and it's not a handsome salary to begin with, okay? I will just say. I tried to figure out what the average town supervisor salary was, and I found a lot of town supervisors in the state of New York who were making $60,000.
They're not, it's very difficult to look at that, and I'd be happy to share with you some numbers. There is a supervisor, and then there's a town administrator. A lot of town administrators in Westchester County make more than my salary. And then there's a supervisor on top of that, and there's generally an administrative assistant. So when you calculate it all out, I'm probably on the low end of salaries.
You are a handsomely paid public servant, I will say. I don't think you can stand in a room like this and say that that's a tough salary to go home with.
I didn't say it was.
Oh, no. Thank you. No
It's also a
offense.
tough job to
No
have.
offense. No offense. I know you have to absorb us. But this is my comment on the salary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, it's Patricia Halpin from Hawthorne. How are you all?
How are you?
Hi.
Hello.
In no certain order that I have this, but we have lived here for 9 years, and each of those 9 years, our taxes for the town have increased. And they're cumulative. They don't go down. So I know there was a number of $50 per household, but that's $50, which ours will likely be more than that, in addition to everything that's increased for the last 9 years as well. So I think it's important to know. While we've been here, we've also heard a lot about we need the development in order to keep our taxes low. And where we're located, we have been impacted by that development. So I'm wondering, where's that offset to the taxes that we were promised?
Are you trying to say that the value of your home went down because of development in town?
I'm saying that we've lived through the construction, the added noise, the added pollution, the added traffic that we have been impacted by because of the construction. And the understanding is the offset is there will be some additional taxes being raised by those corporations to offset the residents' taxes.
As I said before, the greatest impact on tax is school tax.
I'm talking about the town.
It's over 70%.
I'm specifically talking about, when I said to you the last 9 years, our town taxes have increased. We're not talking about school taxes. There's been a lot of development since we've moved here, but our taxes keep going up. And I wonder what's the difference this year that you have to surpass the cap? And if you surpass the cap, will you do it in the future? And what's the percentage you're going to increase it by to allow yourself to do it in the future as well?
That's a decision we have to make down the road. I'm hoping that next year it could be a lot less impact on the taxes.
I think we would all hope for that same thing.
I'm sure.
I know Supervisor
So
mentioned
what
this
I-
earlier too, that the tax revenue being received from new developments and new properties, et cetera, is embedded in this number. So it would have actually been worse had that not been there, based on the current way the budget is formed, yeah.
And I guess I would also ask for transparency, the idea that this came up, there were other towns that spoke about it in advance, gave people notice. Here, the notice came out, what appeared to be on the 13th. There was some discussion around Facebook, which was pushed back by some people who sit on the board to say we don't discuss it there. But we would invite you to either come to speak with Carl Fergenzi, which I saved you. I didn't come in. So you're welcome for that.
You're always welcome.
But I did send an email. All of you were on it, with the exception of Emily. Nobody acknowledged my email or responded to my 2 questions in it. And generally, I will compliment Amanda, who's very responsive. Nobody responded. So I'll direct it to you because you didn't want to entertain any conversation on social media, which I understand. You directed me on how I should go about getting my questions answered. I followed your direction and received nothing.
And I apologize for that. I'll be honest, I did not see your email. I check my emails later in the night when I get home from work. So I apologize. I honestly did not see it. When did you send it?
On the 15th of November.
Okay.
I don't see it either. I didn't.
Yeah, I don't
didn't
recall
get it.
seeing it, but I will go back and look at it.
I appreciate that. And then I wasn't going to address anything, but since 2 people brought up the lawsuit, Mark, I'm sure that you can weigh in on the dollar amount, because when I listen to or attend the meetings, you're the one who brings up the dollar amount that needs to be approved by the board in order to pay those bills.
Yes.
So you probably can give the group an idea, not a specific dollar amount, but an idea of how much to date has been spent.
I don't have an exact figure. I would say at least in terms of what we've been invoiced, it's over 500,000 so far that we've approved on comptroller's memo reports since the onset of the case. And as the supervisor mentioned earlier, we're expecting at least half of that, hopefully more, to be offset by insurance. Yeah.
And just taxes, last thing I'll say is, I have attended many meetings, and it's very unusual to have this many people here, particularly on Thanksgiving week. My husband couldn't be here because he had to go pick up our daughter. There's a lot of people who are in that same boat. So the idea that you waited till people push back before you put on a second meeting?
It's a meeting by law.
It was scheduled this way.
It was,
From the
and
beginning.
what you had said is, government is government, we have deadlines, but didn't you add on another meeting?
No.
There's
always
no-
two.
Always there.
There was always
always
two?
two.
Yep.
For the
Thank
years
you,
that
happy
I've sat here, this is the process that we go through every
Thank you.
budget season.
Thank
There
you.
are 2 public hearings. There'll be another one on December 10th, so if anyone has any additional questions. But we are mandated by the state of New York to follow a schedule as the comptroller described in her opening comments. And we are required by law to have adopted a budget by December 20th.
Yeah.
It's the same process, and I've been here long enough to know that we follow the same process. We don't waver. This is what the state tells us. We follow the guidelines. So
So what
yes,
I will just add to that is there are other towns that are surpassing or asking to surpass that cap, and they have been more communicating with their constituents and the people whose pockets are going to be emptied by the increase in taxes. And I'm asking for transparency in that.
no, I understand what you're asking.
Okay.
I can also say that many of us are in touch with our colleagues throughout the county. And I myself have been to a meeting two Thursdays ago and spoke to several. And I know the struggle is real throughout Westchester County. I also know that many communities are struggling. Several will be over the tax cap. Several will be in double digits over the tax cap. This board has worked very hard to keep the increase as low as possible.
So
And
is
I
the
tell you-
13th the first time that you notified the public of your desire to...
We have been working on this budget from August, when the department heads first meet with the comptroller and the supervisor.
So is the first time you notified the public of your desire to increase the cap on November the 13th? Or did you start in August when you were working on the
No,
budget?
we did not start in August, Ms. Halpern. I think you're twisting
Oh,
what I'm
my
trying to
last
say.
name is Halpin.
Well, I apologize for that. No. What I'm saying to you is that there's a lot of work that goes into devising a budget of
Yes.
over $65 million for a town of this size.
Right.
okay?
And I'm
we
asking
work-
for transparency, that's all. I'm not saying that you're not doing a lot of work, or that
And-
you're not working on it since August, or there are
and-
other
and
towns
just
that
to
are
also-
suffering the same consequences.
To defend the supervisor, the staff, these department heads that are here this evening, myself and my fellow board members. We meet 4 times a month. Twice is a public meeting where you can come and ask questions. Twice are work sessions where you can come and, although not engage with the town board, but you can sit there and listen to what the work we are doing, which is work. So we are there, and to hear that we haven't been transparent, I take that as an insult. Most of us all of us reside in town. Most of us are active members of the community in many different ways. We're available by phone, we're available by email, and if people do not reach out to us, we don't know what you're thinking, I can't read your mind.
You were copied on that email, too. You didn't
I
respond.
realize that, and I'm looking at it now. However, again, when you work in an organization, as you probably know, there are certain levels, there are certain people that take on those responsibilities. And it's not for a council person to overstep the department heads, the financial officers, and the supervisor. We are here now trying to answer your questions. And please, for anyone else here who has questions that won't get them answered this evening by coming to the mic, please write them down. Send them in. We all have email. Amanda Gisilli is excellent at responding and letting us know who's trying to get in touch with us. The supervisor has said for years he has an open door policy, and he does. If you want to make an appointment, please call. If you need to speak with me or my colleagues, please call. But no, we will always be united in what we feel is the best thing to do for the town of Mount Pleasant. We might have different opinions, and we discuss those at work session. Again, we are here to listen to you, but we are not here to be chastised. Okay? Thank you.
I have a quick question for you. Was the email from you or from your husband?
It was from me. My husband sent a separate email.
Re-forward it.
As normal.
You forwarded it? Because we're searching, I don't see it.
Yeah, if you could resend it.
His emails are always more detailed.
Oh, I see. Amanda just sent it.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you.
Amanda.
There was no intent to chastise, just being open and honest and responsive to emails when they're sent, that's all. And I wish you all a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you for coming.
Happy Thanksgiving. Oh, she added his.
You
Did you
sign
sign
it?
it? Thank you.
I'm probably one of the few people who has come to town meetings year after year, and
I'm sorry, what's your name?
I'm sorry, I'm
address?
Jordana. I live in Pleasantville. My concern is, I feel like our area is invisible. We live in the Old Farm District, we're by Usonia, we're by Heritage. I am probably the only one and a few other families that even knew about the meeting. And everyone was surprised that it was 2 days before the holiday, and it doesn't foster a lot of trust amongst my neighbors when they're hearing about a property tax increase and the meeting is 2 days before Thanksgiving. I just asked for transparency, and I was
Can I
here.
ask something? Do you think we sit around and say, when could we have this meeting when nobody would come?
I think there could have been much more
Do you,
publicity.
is that really the sentiment? I'm curious, because everyone keeps saying that, like, we follow a schedule.
I do.
We
I'm
establish,
sorry.
well, I'm telling you that's incorrect, and whether you believe me or not, that's up to you, but we follow a schedule as to when the supervisor states that the budget is going to be, this is the preliminary budget, and this is what we have to put out, right? And then we have to have 2 public hearings before the budget is adopted. So we're having one tonight, we're having another one on December 10th.
Okay.
So there's 2. Now, if we didn't have it tonight, then we couldn't have 2. So we had to have it tonight so that we can have another on the 10th, because these meetings are every other week, and we're in a holiday week as well.
So it's Thanksgiving was late this year, and we're following the law to the way it's written. So we didn't organize this intentionally to inconvenience anybody or to affect anyone's holiday. That's the way it felt.
Well, saying that goes a long way, but we're in the dark.
I didn't know that Thanksgiving was this week until my wife told me last week. I had no idea.
But we're in the
So when
dark.
somebody tells me the 25th or 26th, I don't know what week that is. I know that's the date I'm having the meeting.
Okay.
So at least,
Well, I
for what it's worth,
appreciate
whether you believe me or not, we
some-
don't sit around and do that, I
Some
promise.
type of reaching out to our community to hear what what affects us, because I was also here at least a year, I guess it was over a year ago, when we were being notified about the haloacetic acids in the water. And I came before this board and I asked for transparency, and you said that you would post things on the town site, reach out to us, let us know where we were at with the haloacetic acids. We have a cancer cluster in our area, and it's still been crickets. So I've reached out by email, I've called, and I haven't heard. So I think everything is linked together, that if we reach out and we don't hear back, and I'm pretty persistent, I still didn't hear anything. I feel like I've always been polite, and I haven't heard back. You know I was
On the
here.
water notice, did you never received any notice from the
No.
water department?
No, well, you said you were going to follow up.
No, the water department they have the description of each thing that's in the water.
But you said
percentages.
your office was going to post online to let us know where we were at, because our water bills were going up, but we still couldn't drink our water. So we had a whole big discussion, and you owned it and said you were going to post it and be more communicate with us, and it didn't happen. So that's what makes me nervous about these tax increases. If I can't get an answer about the water, how am I ever going to get an answer about, it doesn't sit with me in a good way if
understand.
little things,
I apologize.
it's not a little
Did not-
thing, it's my health, it's everyone's
If you did not
health.
receive that report from the water department, which is required to be distributed, I'm going to look into that.
So that's
Doesn't
where
come from
our,
the town board.
all right.
That comes from the
but
water department.
If somebody says they're going to own it, and reach out to us, and, we feel very invisible where we are. And you see me at these meetings, I've been here. Maybe you don't want to see me, but I'm here.
So you're welcome.
And I appreciate when you do get back to us, so, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who's next?
Hi, good evening. My name is Yael. I live on Sherman Avenue in Hawthorne. I wanted to kind of bring up a point to someone who asked in the beginning about services by the police in terms of schools. So I'm actually an LCSW, which is a licensed clinical social worker, and I do a lot of de-escalation. I'm very familiar with that, and I offered my services to the board in 2022 for free. It was pro bono, and I emailed you in October 23rd. It was both you and the police to try to provide free services to try to decrease escalation happening at the JCCA and the school and the cottage school, but I never heard back from you. I was hoping to provide it. I'm still offering new service as a volunteer.
No, we're not allowed, we can't tell them how to provide services either.
No, not how to tell them, but to do training. We actually met. We met on Zoom. I worked at Montefiore in 2022, and you said that you were interested in kind of collaborating and going forward, but it kind of dropped.
Training with their staff?
No, training with the police on how to provide de-escalation, so there's the decrease in need of police force in those schools.
They have that training, and they're required to get that training.
Right. So we met and we discussed this, and you said that you were interested, but I never heard anything back. So I thought that it would decrease the amount of times that the police does have to go into the actual campus, but there was no follow-up.
I think the staff at the campus maybe would benefit from your services. I mean, we don't go there just to go there. We go there because we get called because they can't handle.
Right. No, I'm
what
not saying
happens there.
saying that the police is not doing its job. I'm saying that when in terms of providing some social service aspect to that.
So our officers all have de-escalation training, but I would love for you to reach out to JCCA and offer your services to them, and I'd be very curious if they take you up on that.
So
I
I
think
have.
that would be a huge
So I
benefit.
have, and they did.
Good,
So
that's excellent.
Yeah, so that's why I wanted also from the town also to kind of get some perspective on kind of what it would look like. And we discussed it, and it sounds like you were open to having further discussion. But I haven't.
A lot of times when I receive an email that's regarding a different department, what I would generally do is send it to that department.
Uh-huh. Which department would that be?
Sometimes they may be overwhelmed with something, sometimes it gets pushed to the side, so I apologize for not personally following up for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we met all four of us, the police chief and you, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
By Zoom.
Well, like I said, it's not in my department that would handle it, so I would generally rely on our police department, or if it's a financial matter, we go to controller's office, building matters go to building. I don't have all those answers, but I do rely on the qualified personnel we have running our departments to take care of those. So if I don't follow up, I apologize for that, because sometimes I just believe it's been taken care of.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else like to discuss the budget?
Come on.
Come after him.
Mr. Sorcelli?
Basically, Joe Sorcelli, Valhalla, all right? Two basic questions. The amendment to the town bylaws, is it a one-time situation to exceed the budget, or is it an open card to do it every year?
Just for 2025.
Only for 2025?
Yes. It has to be done. Any year that you're making that change, you have to get town board approval.
So it's basically a special, recommendation? Okay, confirming that it, theoretically, if we're here again in 2025 this time, right, we have to go through the same budgetary
Yes.
situations. The second question that I have, and there's a comment, right, is the phrase was used, doing more with less. As actual town employees, at least from an observation, it appears our employee base has dramatically increased, whether it be in different departments. Is that number known?
Now, first of all, if you compare our municipality...
I'm not comparing, I'm using
I'm only saying
more for less.
we have to compare it with something. We have an HR personnel that we rely on for advice on staffing and stuff like that. We are generally lower than the average as far as not only salary, but staffing-wise.
Again, but we are also asking for a relatively significant increase above the actual 2% cap. If you really look,
1.5%.
which is 75%. If I can get a 75% raise, it would be a phenomenal year, right, on that side. So, simple numbers.
What is the point here?
No, I'm just, again, the phrase was used more for less. I'm trying to identify whether or not we are actually performing, not being comped, right? But the phrase was, we're doing more with less, but yet if we have increased our, and I'm not going to use payroll, because payroll will go up with union contracts, so forth and so on. That's all understood. But theoretically, payroll can be reduced if we don't continue to add more employees wherever it is, right? So that's a comment that I would like to be, a little bit more versed on. I literally have been reading the budget for the last half hour in the back, right? So I'll have more opportunity. Another, quick, and I'm going to say I lost my train because I didn't jot anything down because I arrived late because I thought the open session was only next week, all right? So I wanted to get some background on it. So we have more for less being one. We have the one time, which I'm happy about.
The
right?
question was asking department heads to do more for less. That's what my request was.
It's
asking department heads to do more
I
with
agree.
less.
It's all the same situation. If we're doing more for less, but I added an employee, right? We have more employees, right? So it's just a natural question whether or not we have increased the overall staffing of the town over the last year to 2 years, whatever it may be.
I say the past 10 years we have.
10 years, right? Yeah. Because you're using comps, and at the same time you use we're doing better than some. We're doing much better than some, but we're probably doing we're more expensive per capita than others.
That's your opinion, not mine, but
It's what we're here for in, in identifying different,
Yeah, we're listening,
information.
definitely.
Right, information, and if, under those circumstances, if I put in an email to request very specific information, that would be responded to before the 10th?
yeah, definitely.
Okay. Just asking, upfront questions at the last minute. And again, there's no personal affront, and yes, I understand the timing and so forth, and there was not an intentional situation to do it today. It was a disadvantage, so,
Believe, I think we have all rather not be here this week.
Oh, there's no question. Hey, if you look at my hands, I had paint on my hands, and I'm still in the same clothes. So, different things to touch up the kitchen, normal situation. I had two other questions that I can probably defer until, until next month, but I was very interested in whether or not this was a one-off, which is apparently it is, right? I still think an excess increase or increasing the budget by 175%, I think that is very significant. Right? Oh, I recall, and I will say something that there was and I found out about it on Facebook, but there was a post on Facebook that talked about how, the traditional, when you want a school budget, everybody threatens the sports programs, right? Hey, we're going to lose the sports programs and so forth. One of the posts referenced that we might be losing fire districts, or it might affect the fire districts and so forth, right? And
Where'd that come from?
It's on Facebook. I could probably find it.
I don't go on Facebook.
No, it was just that, the costs are increasing. And just because I was reviewing it, and I don't know the population, but the Hawthorne fire budget is significantly higher than all the others. Is there an identifiable reason? And is it per capita or anything else?
We have, as you're probably aware, we have absolutely nothing to do with those budgets. We can't say yes or no.
If we're funding it.
Yeah, we have to.
Their ambulance is part of that too, right?
Yeah, they have an ambulance.
Yeah, they have an ambulance, so paid ambulance. They're volunteer.
Fire department that has
Hawthorne is
Paid ambulance.
I'm not saying that's the entire thing, but I think that's a.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
something
we're
to keep in
talking,
mind.
we're talking.
So you compare Hawthorne to Thornwood.
We're talking probably, if you're looking at, $65 million, and that budget is $650,000 above the others, we're looking at 1% right there, right? So I don't know whether or not as you said, we have no control. If we're funding it, I don't know the politics, but you're telling me they can come to you with a budget that is going to say $2 million, right? And we have to pay it?
It's up to the taxpayers within that district to object to it.
But that district is now affecting the entire town.
No. It's paid by that district.
It's paid for by Hawthorne District.
So even though it's included in the entire budget, right, it is segregated strictly to Hawthorne residents?
Yes.
All right.
So the Hawthorne, the special district tax in Hawthorne is going to be higher than Thornwood. Thornwood is
No,
considerably lower.
Thornwood, yeah, Thornwood, I think it was Thornwood was like 350,000 or something like that, right, on the budget. All right, so that you answered the question, because when I was looking at a budgetary scenario, it appeared as it was a single line item, right, on that. I may have some additional questions. I will probably, unfortunately, reading it on my phone without my glasses, because they're still at home, I couldn't read everything I was looking at.
Got to zoom in.
I was doing it, but it's only so big. And even on that, when was it actually posted? Because I did see it was available, so that's why I went on to it. When was it actually posted?
The budget.
Yeah.
Emily posted it.
Amanda posted it.
Because unfortunately, I see sometimes with meetings, agendas get posted very shortly before the actual meeting. Not saying this one, but other meetings, it doesn't seem to give, significant opportunity to, to review the information.
Amanda, it's
72 hours before.
As I said, I got a 64-page budget that I have 72 hours to review.
No, the agendas have
The
to be
agenda.
posted 72 hours prior.
When did the,
November 10th?
Post the budget.
Yeah.
We posted with a public hearing notice. In the public hearing notice, it was available in Emily's office, and I hyperlinked it.
oh, I understood it was hyperlinked to us and so forth, but I don't know, and as you said,
He's
the
asking what
public,
date did you
the
post
public
it?
hearing,
Oh,
the public hearing was only 2 weeks ago,
I can look.
or 3,
Once the on the website.
Once goes back to some of the objections earlier on, that there doesn't appear to be as much transparency or much opportunity to.
It's a state, so.
The state is,
Just so
you
you
can
know.
always do things early.
That you can't do
can't?
it too early, and you can't do it too late. There's a
Agreed.
window.
There's a window.
7 to 10 days. I'm pretty sure I did this one 10 days. Then if I did it too early, people would say that they forgot. So we try to
No,
do
there's-
it.
You know, it's, hey, we forgot about Thanksgiving already, right? You know.
Just me.
Just you, right? That's because, that just means you're not entertaining.
We are actually.
Right. I appreciate it. I may be here in 10 days or, you know, or actually, what is it? It's 14 days, yeah. 14 days. And it'll be some specifics, but I would be very curious on the, I'll say, the budgetary situation when you look at overall payroll was not significant. Yes, there was a lot of comments on, you know, raises for certain people, so forth and so on, and all the other stuff. Everybody, you know, if you're doing more for less, you try to take less on that side, right? So that's as you said, that's an opinion, right? And you know, I don't want to take a pay cut, and you spend a lot of time, and I'll give you credit on it. So we will find out, but I would be very curious about the you know, the phrase "more for less." Usually, when a person tells me I'm doing more with less, that means I have less people, right? I have less people or less resources, right?
Now, each department has a wish list, things that they would like to have. And
I have-
Maureen and I go through it, we cut line by line.
Oh, I'm not debating. I have a wish list for Christmas, you know, and I'm not going to get everything on my wish list. And if it's a bad year, an inflationary year or anything else, I might have to get less for Christmas. Or, as people have recommended, maybe I don't get any presents for Christmas. I don't get any raises.
Right,
But
I can't
that's-
really correlate the town board budget with
Oh, I know.
Christmas, but.
I know, but it's just an expectation of what's there. Sometimes, as was discussed, the water scenario, and I've been very quiet on the water scenario, right? Even though I have to say, I bought, you know, 1-year filters, and they don't last 2 months in my house, right? And I am one of the test houses. I am one of the test houses. I thank you. I'll probably see you in 2 weeks, and,
Okay.
you know, and I'll try to get you the questions beforehand. Give
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Did you sign
Joanne
in?
Scutero. I'm in Hawthorne. I've been in this town for about, actually over 50 years. Two things, and I'll keep this brief. Number one, there's what's fair and equitable. As far as the town of Sleepy Hollow, the voting rights case is what's fair and equitable, and then there's what's lawful or constitutional. And it seems to me that what's going on here is maybe lawful, it may be unlawful or unconstitutional, but it certainly doesn't strike me as being fair and equitable. If it were fair and equitable, then given that we have more Democrats in this town than Republicans, we would have at least 2 or 3 people on the town board who are Democrats. That's one thing. Number 2 is, you're aware that the town of Greenberg, the town supervisor, is, the town of Greenberg has roughly twice as many residents as the town of Mount Pleasant, correct?
About 100,000.
Roughly. I'm not going to say it's exactly half or, you know, whatever. But anyway, the thing is, I noticed in the 2024 adopted budget that the town supervisor and the town controller got 13% raises. I didn't see where anybody else did. And then you're also proposing another raise for yourselves, although not as large, for this year. So I'm wondering, do you not see that's not a good look?
I lost you on something. As far as increases, department heads always follow what the union salaries are. And
Well, yeah,
it's
they're civil
average-
service, but you're not.
It's average 3%.
You're not, I know, but that's the point, though. I mean, you already had a hefty raise in the adopted budget for 2024, and you're giving yourself another raise. And it just isn't a good look, considering that you're out-earning the town supervisor for the town of Greenberg. You were already out-earning him in 2024.
That's not true. If you calculate the total amount that office has to charge to do the same job that I'm doing, it's a lot different.
Well, does he have more assistants? I mean, how is it that you're justifying?
He does. He has a staff that does what Amanda and I do.
Well, it just doesn't look good. Let's put it this way. But anyway, that's all I want to say.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Lauren Charney. I
you
live on
sign in?
Sherman Avenue. I signed in.
Thank you.
This is my first town meeting, but it's been very interesting, so thank you. I will come to more. I just had a couple of questions. I know there's been some discussion about the budget requiring 2 meetings, and the next meeting is going to be on December 10th. But the first notice didn't say anything about December 10th. Like, I just went and reread it. So, like, yeah.
Oh, so, the town board has to make a motion, to keep it open or close it.
Okay.
In our clarification email on the bottom, it says historically, the town board always holds 2 public hearings for the budget, so we clarified that on the bottom.
How many?
They have to make a motion to keep it open or close it, because some budget meetings, no one comes.
Yeah.
Budget meetings, like last year.
Nobody came. Okay. Yeah, I don't mean to be accusatory. I'm just wondering because I definitely missed that because I opened.
Yeah, the original notice was just for the public hearing on the 26th.
Yeah.
Because you noticed once, and then tomorrow we'll notice for the continuation.
Okay, so that hasn't been noticed yet at all.
No, but we.
The December 10th meeting.
We're talking about it, we put in the clarification notice.
Okay.
And historically, the town board has always held 2 public hearings.
Okay.
So we did that last year, we did it the year before, there's always 2 public hearings.
Can we maybe next year put that in the first notice, just saying usually there's 2 public
You can't. You can't. It's a legal notice, so there's certain requirements for what it has to say and when it has to be published.
Okay.
So I can't
Okay.
do that.
I get that
Although
it
it would be
super
better if we
inconvenient.
could.
Okay.
We will be, at the close of our meeting, we talk about the next meetings.
Okay.
The scheduled meetings, so it's always a matter of public record as we're speaking about it.
Okay. I mean, the whole town can't come to the meetings, but I understand what you're saying. There was some questions about the legal fees and other like budgetary questions that I'm wondering if, I see the comptroller is still here, if she could have addressed those. I know she doesn't have all of the information of the town budget with her, but I thought maybe some of those questions that were open-ended could have been answered since we have her here. And the last thing about the salary increases, I am also a public servant. I work for the federal government, and we get, with inflation, we get salary increases. So I totally understand, and I'm sympathetic to needing a budget to get a salary increase. But I'm wondering if there's an option for proposing a salary increase, but that doesn't go into effect until the next election cycle, so that people have a chance to vote with, on the salary increase essentially with your positions when you're up for re-election. And that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else like to address the board at this time regarding the budget?
Good evening. My name is Marilyn Miller. I live in Thornwood on Bellevue Avenue. I wasn't intending to be up here. I thought I would hear a couple of things. So I would like to ask, as I heard that we were considering or maybe have decided to exceed the cap on the budget, and I talked to other people in town and neighbors that I thought would be interested to come to the hearing, I had an awful lot of people that said to me that, oh, what's the point? They've already made up their mind. They're going to do what they want, and they're not they're really not going to take it into account. I know this is being broadcast, and I would like confirmation. I'm assuming that this hearing is to get the town's input and perhaps reconsider, and I think it would be very helpful to the community, particularly since the tone got a little bit kind of condescending a little bit earlier, if you could comment, Mr. Fulgenzi, on that you are seriously going to consider the input that you have, and perhaps that will encourage some people who are very concerned about the cap and the precedent it's going to set and the cumulative effect that we've had for a number of years. And it's granted the town budget is the smallest part of what we have here, but it all adds up, and a lot of people are seeing their incomes go down significantly. So I would ask, would you give the town that assurance at this point?
In regards to how do we lower the budget?
Is it a done deal that you've decided the budget is going to exceed the cap, or are you still taking input from people?
It's still a process.
And I think that's a very important thing. I'm very encouraged to hear that that's the case.
We haven't adopted anything at this point. The problem that we have right now is we worked it down from 7-8%. We kept cutting, and the best we were able to do without depleting our fund balance, which I think is very important to maintain a certain amount of fund balance for something that goes wrong. We've had some conditions with flooding and all that.
Right, and we don't want
Excessive amount of
to
money.
risk credit ratings changing and things like that as well.
It's all affected by that. So we do at this point, we haven't stopped thinking, but at this point, we felt that 3.5% was about the best we could do. But we're not done.
Well, I also would encourage you to look very closely. I think you missed an opportunity of having given a signal to the town and to people that it was a high possibility, or you were seriously concerned about being able to stay under the cap, and you might have engaged some interaction. I thought the comments back to Ms. Halperin, I'm not sure I have the right name, I thought they were a little harsh, honestly, Ms. Smiley, and I don't usually see that from you, so I would ask you to kind of reconsider that.
I understand what you're saying, but I think it just goes to the passion that I have for what I do here.
And passion is good, but scolding the audience who's here to express their opinion, I think you were a little bit harsh on it.
If anyone took it that way, I apologize.
Thank you.
However, as an elected official, I respect all of you as taxpayers and voters, but I have to tell you something. I'm looking out there at the department heads, and I respect them too. And they work hard. We have asked them for a lot. As the supervisor said, we were at 7 to 8% over.
Yeah.
And he, the comptroller, and every department head here had to suck up and deal with it. Sorry for the French, but it's been tough, and you can see our frustration.
Well, and the sentiments are the same on both
Yes.
sides, so there were a lot of stresses there.
Okay, thank you.
My other comment, Carl, is has there been an effort to actually identify I don't know what we'd call it, but the non-cap budget, and could you articulate what things would you be taking out? If we don't have that now, I think that would perhaps make this more palatable for people if they understood if, in order to stay under the cap, what would change, because we're not really hearing that.
Would you like
would hear
to
that.
know where we cut? Is that what you would?
No, if you were to stay under the cap, you're saying this is all we can do, we have to exceed the cap by this big number. You don't think it's a big number? A lot of people think it's a big number. So if you did stay under the cap and you did not have the big excess going over, what would you be cutting out? Does anybody know that?
No, we can't cut departments any further. It would be using more fund balance would be the only way to get under the cap.
Or you could stop doing something. What I'm not hearing, which we usually hear in business, anytime people are trying to make a financial target for a certain amount of work, they start saying, well, maybe there's some things that we've been doing or that we were planning to do that we should reconsider and say, you know what? In order to stay under the cap, we would take this, this, and this, and we would not do it this year. We would hold off and delay it.
No, that is part of the plan.
I think you...
Do you mean like cut in services?
Well, services or, call it services, whatever. I mean, I see some new hires. What happens if you don't do a new hire? I mean, people in business deal with this conceptual problem all the time. And they say, if this is the number you must meet, what are you going to stop doing?
Right.
So
So
call it
there's no
services,
hire.
call it don't hire, call
There's,
it...
the 2025 budget does not include any new hires for 2025.
There was one office that was identified in the budget.
One officer, and then if somebody retires, obviously we would have to refill that position. But there's only one.
Unless you say, I'm going to say, if I'm not going to exceed, in order to not exceed the cap, which is what the community, some people in the community would want to know, if we don't exceed the cap and we stay under it, here's what we must do, here's what we must change, here's what we must give up, or delay, or say. I think you owe the community that answer.
But I think, I don't like to use the word, "oh, the community," because I think that working with Noreen for the past 2 months on this budget, I think a lot of effort went into to try to, we're all taxpayers in town. None of us want to pay more tax. I don't want to cut services, because everybody wants the leaves pick up. They want the drainage in the street to work. They want the snow to be plowed. And these are things that we have to do. They want public safety.
So
They
there's
want-
nothing that you could cut. So then how can you say honestly that it isn't, there is still a possibility of not passing
We
the
could
cut?
do layoffs. We could talk about laying off
But I
people.
think that's exactly what I'm saying. What is it that you would do in order to not, if you're still open to considering that you're not going to exceed the cap, you have to be able to describe, if you're not going to exceed the cap, what will that mean to us? What will you do
It's a
specifically?
decision on whether we use more fund balance.
So you would not cut anything, what you would do is cut the reserves. That's the only
We've already
option.
cut the budget as far as we think we could go without affecting services.
Okay.
And I'm being very honest. Department heads are not thrilled about the budget because we ran it very, very tight. Nothing on their wish list was granted, period. The only thing is public safety, which I think is a very important thing for our town. One officer is on for the 25 budget. That's it. Now, if the town board decides to use more fund balance, which I'm very cautious about, then we'd be able to be at the cap.
Okay. All right. I'm disappointed that there isn't something that, what you might not want to do it, but that you don't identify anything that could be done.
She's saying, what is it that you would have to do that you don't want to do?
Right.
Which is why we have to go over the cap.
Right.
Lay off employees.
Well, spell out what that is.
Well, I just said before, I said we'd have to lay off employees.
But
Cut
specific.
services.
What, if you laid off some employees, you'd have to lay off how many of them, and where would you do it? And that would mean that the town people who are looking at the following kind of services wouldn't get them. I mean, make it meaningful so that people understand why this is necessary, because we haven't heard that. I mean, what we hear is, you've worked really hard, I grant, good, but we don't know what that means. And so it's hard to conclude that it's impossible to stay under the cap, because...
No, nothing is impossible.
Well, we want to know, in order to do
I said already,
it, what would they have to do?
We could lay off employees, we could cut back on services, such as, let's say, leaf pickup. Eliminate that.
Pick the services you
I don't
would
think it's
cut
gonna-
and say what they are, so people
trying
would
to.
know. Well, no, you're saying maybe it's this and maybe it's that.
Well, it's not fact right now.
And that's
We're
what I'm
talking, we're
asking you
discussing.
to
I'm not going to tell you, I'm
communicate.
going to guarantee we're going to eliminate leaf pickup or snow removal or anything like that. I'm not going to tell you that right now. This is a discussion we're gonna have.
Okay.
Do we cut services? Which
I would
hate
hope
to
you
do.
would hear that before the next meeting, so that we know what you're talking about and what the consequences would be. Because otherwise, you're just asking everybody to just blindly trust that it can't be done, as opposed to describing, here's what we would have to give up.
I'm not asking for anybody
Yeah.
to go blindly on anything.
Right.
The town board is not just blindly approving a budget here.
Okay. Well, and the community wants to know, what would life be like if we do stay under the cap? Because that would be what we would like. And the first time anybody heard that it was even a consideration was less than a week ago. So that, and now there's very short time to be able to give any input, and that's the information that they'd like,
Well,
people
that's
would
when
like
we
to have.
decided that it may be the only way,
Okay.
was at that date.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello, Supervisor. I lived in this town all my life.
I can't hear you.
I lived in this town all my life.
What's your name and address?
Oh, I'm
please?
sorry.
Sorry.
It's, my name is Maria Annunziata Allen Swanson Drive, Thornwood. And I lived here all my life. And I think I want to thank you and the board for your service to the town. I love this town. But the thing is, I think it's getting too big to handle. And when I read or pick up a newsletter and see Toll Brothers is going to build a development, all I think to myself is, well, how are we going to handle that extra populace coming in, you know? It means, like you said, public safety, the emergency, paramedics. So I don't know whether the town is getting too big to handle in a way. You know, it's getting very expensive. I understand that. So is there any hope that, let's say, development will kind of just will not keep going on and on this way, because it's very hard on the taxpayers, and I think for you also to service it. And that's all I want to say.
I grew up in Hawthorne, and when I was a kid, there was woods around me. We used to camp out in the woods. When a new family moved in, I got excited. Man, I got new friends. It was a nice thing as this town grew. You can't tell somebody who owns a piece of property you cannot develop it, because then you're in a court case. Because it's illegal for us to say, sorry, you can't build on that property. You can't do that. We have cases where they file on Article 78 because they don't like the decisions town board or planning board or zoning board made in regards to their property. So it's another challenge that we have to deal with. It would be nice to go back when I was a kid. Unfortunately, we do have property in this town that can be developed and will eventually.
Oh, no. Well, do we have a say on that? Can we vote on this?
We can control maybe the size of a project, the amount of homes, or we could put certain restrictions on it.
Because it's not helping, I mean, I would think that the more development then, like up in the Summit or whatever else is being developed, would help to maintain the tax base, you know.
If we didn't have the development that we have had, the taxes would be a lot higher.
True?
Oh, yeah.
Well, there goes my theory.
I'm sorry, I wish I could tell you something different, but I want to be factual with you.
And each of those projects have requirements around them as well that are set by the planning board. So for example, Toll Brothers is an HOA. So to your point, yes, it might incur additional needs for public safety, but in terms of sanitation, garbage pickup, snow plowing, that will all be paid by the residents of only that community. So there's ways that the town uses the ability to develop with trying to manage how is it most efficient for
Less of an
the
impact.
But when the development comes in, can't the town say, we don't have the enough of a police force to handle the safety, or, isn't maybe a way to curtail some of the development so that it is manageable?
There have been many developers that have come to the town board, like at a work session, they make a presentation, and we tell them, go back and be creative, because it ain't happening here.
Okay. Well, thank you for hearing me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Anyone else like to discuss the budget? Being there are no further speakers, I would entertain that we keep this meeting open until December 10th. So Resolution 45324 will be to approve a resolution to keep this meeting open, the budget meeting open.
So moved.
Motion by Danielle.
Second.
Second by Lori. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, public hearing on considering a local law authorizing the town to exceed the tax cap. We've had discussions about this already. Just to make you aware, we have no intention tonight of approving that tax cap at this point. Eventually, we will have to make a decision on that. So we would like to carry over this town public meeting, if it's okay for us to do that, or?
We need to have the public hearing now, because if you end up exceeding the tax cap and don't have the public hearing, the controller can fine you,
Okay.
the town. So
But we've had discussions on the cap already.
Yeah, but I
But you
would-
want to open it up again?
Let's open up this hearing for the 2% tax cap. If people have more comments that are different, they can make them.
Okay.
And if not, then you can adjourn it to the same date of December 10th.
Okay, then I'll ask Emily, our town clerk, to read the notice.
Just in time. Notice of public hearing by the Town Board of the Town of Mount Pleasant to consider a local law to override the limit on the amount of real property taxes that may be levied by the town. Please take notice that the Town Board of the Town of Mount Pleasant, New York shall conduct a public hearing at the Town Hall on the 26th day of November, 2024 at 7:00 p.m. to consider a proposed local law to override the limit on the amount of real property taxes that may be levied by the Town of Mount Pleasant pursuant to General Municipal Law, Section 3C, and to allow the Town of Mount Pleasant to adopt a town budget for A, town purposes, B, fire protection districts, and C, any other special or improvement district governed by the town board for the fiscal year 2025 that requires a real property tax levy in excess of the tax levy limit as defined by General Municipal Law, Section 3C. Please take further notice. A copy of the proposed local law is available for review in the town clerk's office. Please take further notice that at the public hearing upon said proposed local law, an opportunity to be heard in regards thereto will then and there be given to those favoring adoption of such proposed local law and also those opposed thereto.
Thank you, Emma. Well, we are continuing the public hearing on the 2% tax cap. If you have not already commented, or if you want to add something to that, you're welcome to do so at this time. Sure.
Kyle here again, sorry. Just the question on the 2% modeling that the other person was asking about, the woman, I don't catch her name. You were talking about if you have to go with a 2% tax cap, the option is layoffs. Are you, one of the options is an option to have a smaller increase for management?
Yeah, we did that calculation. If we eliminate or lower that, will it bring us under the cap? It will not.
So any one thing is the only way to pursue it, or is it that any 10 things smaller is a possibility?
It could be a combination of things to get us below.
Excellent. So I'm going to ask the question again. Are you considering, if you go with a 2% tax cap, to have a smaller increase for management?
Yeah, that's one of the considerations.
Excellent.
That's not going to lower it. It's not enough to bring it
It's
below.
not in and of itself enough. I
Right,
get it.
correct. So it has to be more than that.
Accepted. So to follow up, the litigation seems to be another big item. I'm not even familiar with it. If that were to be settled, would that settle it?
No.
Would that plus the reducing the increase in management get us there?
the litigation that we're going through is not something that's throwing us over the cap,
It's money spent by the town.
obviously, yeah.
Yes, so it's dollars. And compensation is dollars. Dollars here, dollars there, $2. $2 going to get us under the tax cap?
No.
How close are we?
I don't know, I don't have those numbers in my head, but if the litigation stopped today,
Yes.
that's not going to solve that issue.
Any one thing, I accept it.
Yeah.
But it seems like you were talking about layoffs, and the question that would be great for December 10th is, what are the 1, 2, 10, 20 things that you would do to get us under so we can make an informed decision? Because she's right, in any business, we model multiple budgets. And sometimes you have to do more with, you do less with less. And it's reasonable for us to see what that looks like. And let us make an informed decision, what does 2% look like? So is that something you'd be able to give to us with some notice so we could have it for the 10th?
That is what we are looking at right now. What do we do to get at 2%?
I understand what you're looking at. Is that something you'll be able to provide to us to consider so when we have an informed conversation on the 10th?
Yeah, I will work on whatever practical way that we think we can preserve services and stay at 2%. That's always a possibility. It's a town board decision, not just mine.
I understand, but it'd be great for the transparency. Thank you.
Thanks.
Sure. We try to do that.
I want to make a comment too as I sit here, and we have, I think I've counted 8 department heads that are here tonight that are not protected by a union. They don't get overtime. They're not technically really paid to be here. It's not in the job description. And I want to thank all, I believe it's 8 of you, department heads, for being here tonight. That's above and beyond, in my opinion. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
And
Well, you wanted to make a point.
I had a question. We're talking about going over the tax cap. Does the public understand that the 2% is the limit established by the state? Okay? So we all know that no matter what we do, there will be an increase in town taxes next year. All right? So I think what we're looking at right now is not the totality of the increase. It's the part where we're going above the 2%, which right now is 1.5%. So as we work as a town board and take in your comments and sit with the supervisor again and probably with the controller again, we're looking at the 1.5%. And what we really have to take in mind is that, as Danielle mentioned and the supervisor confirmed, there are no plans for hiring next year for 25, 1 police officer, and that's based on the needs for public safety, which are paramount above everything else in town. So when we take a look at what we do for the town, from highway to court to recreation to parks to the assessor's office to the Office of Elder Americans, there's so many things, to the receiver of taxes, to all the other department heads, that we really have to drill down. Please remember, it is 1.5%, but we don't want to cut your services. It's a.
That's exactly what we're asking.
I understand, but I was reaching the point where I'm thinking, does everyone think we want to do this, and do you realize that it's 2%, it's going to go up anyway because of, let's just say, cost of living, and the state mandates that we stay under 2. Okay, so we're really talking here about 1.5.
The only thing we have anything we can give any input on, and so that's the only thing.
No, I think we get the message. Thank you. I think we understand, and we're going to try.
I tell you, ideally, I would like a 0% tax increase. But at the same token, something has to go.
And we've got to spell out what that would be.
Yeah?
So you want like a scenario, in other words, or a number of scenarios? So, okay, we could lay off 5 highway workers, we don't pick up leaves anymore. Example A.
Yeah, but the cost.
Okay, combination with compensation.
It's fun, we got that part.
Okay.
Business.
Union salaries are set as a contract.
Yeah, just for management.
Health insurance.
I just wanted to make a comment on, you your analysis is excellent, but you have to take in consideration the cost of healthcare, of labor, of oil, electricity, pensions. It has hit the roof. I mean, people are frustrated, and our salaries are not matching the increase, and that's part of the problem. You analyzed it beautifully. But at the same time, the costs, these are record level costs that we've never seen before that are exceeding our budget. The last time we increased the cap was in 2013. So the last 10, 11 years, we've been very fiscally responsible, and the town is managed beautifully. Now, the costs are astronomical, and Mark mentioned it. I have my own business. I'm an entrepreneur. I have a golf shop. I look at costs all the time. I look at labor. I look at insurance costs. I look at electricity. If you look at our numbers, they're not normal numbers. So we're trying to solve a problem, but you also have to analyze cost. You also have to analyze and think about, hey, what's the history of the town? Do they do this every year? This is like the exception to the rule. I don't want to raise your taxes. I don't want to raise your taxes $1. Right now it's $49, and I feel terrible about it. Okay, and we're here 34 years. We raised a family. It's a great place to live. It's awesome. Things are very, very expensive. It's expensive to live. We're trying to do the best we can so you get a bang for your buck. Do we want to raise your taxes $49? Absolutely not. I don't want to raise them $1. But if you look at the history of what we've done, we've been fiscal conservatives the last 10, 11 years. This is the exception to the rule, and that's one of the reasons why everyone came out, because they're like, hey, you're going above the cap, because it hasn't been done, because this team of people here and that team of people have done an exceptional job.
If you want to speak, please come up to the mic. There's 40,000 people in town want to hear what you have to say.
Sure. Well, I don't know specifically, but wasn't the cap, the state law, wasn't that implemented just a few years ago? It wasn't 20 years.
2012.
Right, because property taxes were crazy. So to say that, oh, we haven't raised.
No, he's accurate. He said in the last 10 years, the tax was actually implemented 12 years ago.
I had the right dates. Implemented 2012.
Okay, so
This is
what
2013.
my point is that we don't have dozens of years of like, in the last 10 years, we've stayed within the cap, which is great. That's the point of the cap.
And 1 year was 0%. If I'm supervisor, am I giving the right information?
Yes.
Yeah.
1 year was 0%.
Right, that's the point of the cap, is the cap is working.
Just to rein in costs,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yes.
Thank you.
You sign in?
Hi, my name's Bob Levy. I live in Pleasantville District. And what I'm going to say right now is very unpopular. I didn't even think about it until you said something. What would you like to get rid of? Leaf pickup? I've lived in many places and never had leaf pickup. I personally compost my own leaves. How much money do we spend on that?
Well, that's a number we're going to look at.
I mean, that to me, I don't use it, it's a complete luxury. And when you're in a fiscal crisis, you get rid of luxury items. I strongly suggest you get rid of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't want to be the one to tell everybody we're not going to pick up your leaves anymore, but we're going to talk about it.
I hate it. The leaves sit there for 3 weeks, you finally get them picked up, it's a nightmare.
Anyone else want to address the 2% tax cap? All right, being no further speakers, we will like to carry on this meeting. We'll continue until December 10th for a further discussion on the 2% tax cap. And in the meantime, we will try to look at some of the ideas that were discussed tonight. What can we cut further? What can we use or not use? And we will let you know. So Resolution 45424 will carry on this, what do you call it?
Public hearing open.
Public hearing.
Keep the public hearing open until December 10th.
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to continue the public hearing for Resolution 454-24, of
Motion by
2%
Tom.
tax cap.
Second.
Second by Mark, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is a public hearing to consider a hardship variance from the battery storage moratorium submitted by New Leaf Energy. I would ask you read the public notice.
Notice of public hearing to consider a hardship variance application from the battery storage moratorium submitted by New Leaf Energy related to property located at 115 Wall Street, Valhalla. Please take notice that the Town Board of the Town of Mount Pleasant, at a meeting thereof to be held at the Town Hall located at 1 Town Hall Plaza in the hamlet of Valhalla, County of Westchester, State of New York, on the 26th day of November 2024 at 7:00 p.m., will hold a public hearing to consider the application submitted by New Leaf Energy seeking a hardship variance from the town's battery storage moratorium relating to property located at 115 Wall Street, Valhalla, New York, and any person may be heard in favor of or against such application. Please take further notice that the application submitted by New Leaf for a hardship variance is available for review in the town clerk's office.
Thank you. At this time, I believe the representative would like to address the public.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor and members of the Town Board. Robert Gaudioso with the law firm of Snyder & Snyder on behalf of the applicant, New Leaf Energy. I'll introduce the team that we have with us this evening. I just want to give you a little bit of background about the project. This is a proposed battery energy storage system, and this is a request for a waiver from the moratorium that was adopted on September 10th. But the history of the project is important, I think, for the waiver application. We had originally met with the town planner and the building inspector back around this time last year. We filed the complete application for site plan approval with the planning board on February 14th, and we filed for the special permit application on June 5th with the Zoning Board of Appeals. And the application was very similar to a project that had previously been approved and has recently been constructed in Hawthorne at 65 Broadway behind the Reformed Church. And it was New Leaf's predecessor that processed that application and received the approvals under the existing zoning code. We met with the planning board a number of times. We were scheduled for a possible secret determination in August, and at that time the town board had proposed the moratorium. We submitted our comments to the moratorium. At that time we offered New Leaf's expert assistance. That offer still stands. If the town board does move forward with new regulations, we'd be happy to meet with your staff, your consultants, the town board, yourself, in preparing new regulations, because we do not oppose new regulations, but we believe the existing regulations and the zoning board and planning board have the ability to process this application if this waiver were granted. The moratorium, as I mentioned earlier, was adopted on September 10th, and on October 10th we filed for the waiver that we're here for this evening. As part of that application, Mr. Zach Longo, who's with us tonight, he's the project engineer. He went through the criteria for the waiver, and there's a letter in the record going through that criteria, and Zach will talk about a little bit about that in the site plan in a moment. We submitted confirmation that there's no existing contamination that'll be disturbed or impacted by the proposed facility. There were some prior comments, and we thought that was important. We submitted the referral letter from Westchester County Planning Department, and they actually wrote that they commended the applicant on this particular application, and I think we submitted a lot of the documentation that showed the importance of this type of facility. And finally, we submitted the site plan, which Zach will talk about in a moment, which includes the fact that we're in the light industrial zone, where not near any residences. The closest residences are over 1,100 feet away. The existing commercial buildings over 150 feet away. We're in a grassy area next to the Taconic, across the street from a cemetery, and adjacent to the Con Ed transmission towers. So we think it's a good site overall based on the site plan. But with that, I'd like to first introduce Zach Longo. He's the project engineer, and he's from New Leaf Energy, and he has a few comments that he'd like to elaborate on. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Zach Longo. I'm a project civil engineer at New Leaf Energy. I'm the engineer of record for this project. I'm also a New York State licensed professional engineer. So starting off, I'd like to give an overview of the site. So our project is located at 115 Wall Street. It's located to the north of the Taconic State Parkway and also Commerce Street. So we're placing the site to the southeast on our parcel. Our parcel is a 10-acre parcel. It's located within an M1 zoning district, which is a light industrial district. So the site is, the project site is going to be located within a grassed area that's located to the south of the existing parking lot that's down here. The grassed area is a relatively flat area. As you can see between Commerce Street and where our site is, there's a large forested area between the two. This is going to provide additional natural screening from being observed during operation. The nearest residents are located to the east over here, along Park Avenue and Leroy Avenue, and the closest resident is approximately 1,100 linear feet away from our site. Next one. Okay. So our proposed facility is a 5 megawatt, 4-hour duration battery energy storage site. It's approximately 6,200 square feet in size. As I said earlier, it's located to the southeast of the existing parking lot. It consists of 6 Tesla Megapack 2XL batteries, each of them represented here. Other equipment is related to the above ground equipment for the interconnection for the system to the grid itself. To the south of our proposed facility is the Con Edison utility line. It's an overhead wire that runs approximately 40 feet to the south of the facility. Our facility will be connecting into the Con Edison grid. To the south of our facility is also a federal wetland down in this area. As you can see from our site plan, we are outside of the 50-foot wetland buffer, which is enforced by the town. So this project will not impact any of the wetlands or the buffer. As part of this project, we are also proposing a 20-foot wide access road, which would connect from the existing parking lot to the proposed facility to provide maintenance and access to the facility itself. As part of the design, we've elevated the system approximately 2 feet above existing grade. This is to provide to keep the electrical equipment outside of the flood elevation, and also to provide gravel storage for the stormwater runoff that's generated from the impervious surfaces on our site. Around the perimeter of the site is going to be a retaining wall, which is going to hold back the gravel within the area of the facility. On top of the retaining wall is going to be a chain link fence, which is going to be approximately 8 feet tall, which is going to provide additional security to the site. On the outside edge, there's going to on the outside edge of the chain link fence, there is going to be HDPE slats that are going to be installed, which are going to provide additional screening, so you can't look into the facility. So at each of the 4 corners of the facility, we are proposing to put in additional motion detection lighting and security cameras. And along the eastern and western sides of the facility is going to be, we are proposing additional tree or landscape screening to provide additional screening from the property owner to the east over here, and then whoever is driving along Commerce Street to the west. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just got to make a comment. we've been rehashing this, not only this project, but other projects in the town. The town board has always been open-minded to development. And like I said in the past, we have recommended people go back and rethink their projects because we didn't think they worked. These particular projects, the battery storage units, have been quite a challenge to members of the town board. We have received a tremendous amount of negative information, and we've received some positive information. Obviously, you could buy a cheap battery or you could buy a very good battery, and that may be the reason why some of these have failed. We've been giving demonstrations on what could happen if a battery fails. Sometimes we've been meant to believe that there could be a disaster in a community because of a battery failure. And we've seen cases where it's a very limited result from it. We all worry about what does it do in the air? Does it pollute the air? Is it going to pollute the water? These are all issues that we have to look at. It's not a simple decision for us to make. And you could give us the finest batteries in the world. I'm sure Tesla batteries are quite quality. But we're in a tough position. That's all I can tell you. And we did the moratorium because we all wanted to know more about what's going on. And we have learned a lot, and I think there's more we need to learn. The restrictions are very important. Where are we going to put these moving forward? And what are the restrictions surrounding the properties? Obviously, you don't want this in a neighborhood where you have residential. So that's an important thing. But I do think, and I'm not trying to cut your presentation at all, but there are things that we need to be satisfied with before moving forward.
I think those are important points, Mr. Supervisor, and let me say this. The state has set forth mandates that I'm sure you're all aware of, and I don't want to bore you with those details at this late time, but this is happening, and this is happening for a very real reason. The grid needs to be modernized. It needs to be modernized for a number of reasons. There needs to be the influx of renewables. Okay, and renewables work now because we have the technology to store energy. We've always stored energy. We've stored energy in our cars with a gas tank. We've stored energy with propane tanks. We've stored energy with piles of coal. So now we can store electrical energy, and that's why the renewables work. But the grid also needs to be more reliant and more resilient. And the state has been studying this for some time, and we've cited to some of the PSC orders that have come out and the state's mandates pursuant to the Climate Act. And again, I won't go into all those details, but by 2030, this will happen. And it will have to happen safely, and it will have to happen under your guidance and your approval. So we appreciate that. And as I mentioned earlier, I talked about the fact that we had put in our August letter that we wanted to work with you on that. And we were doing that with your zoning board and your planning board. We did that previously on the Hawthorne project. I think that project came out great. But we understand that there are fears, and a lot of times those fears are based on reality, and a lot of times those fears are based on hysteria and things that are read on Facebook. And what I can tell you is we have Mr. Paul Rogers, who's a third-party expert. He's not with New Leaf. He's here this evening. He's an expert in the field. He'd be happy to talk to you tonight or at a work session regarding this. What I would say is that we believe we've picked a good site. We think we have the best batteries. We have the Tesla Megapack 2 batteries. That's the technology that's been approved by New York City. That's the technology that's being built out in New York City. That's the technology that we're installing or have been installed at the Hawthorne project. A lot of what you've heard or seen is incorrect. The amount of fires are very minimal. What your job is you're the legislative body. The planning board and the zoning board will have to look at the site specifics. They will have to look at the site plan, the distance to residences, all those different things. Your job is to establish the regulations that then those boards can use to actually process the application. And what we called out in our August letter was the fact that NYSERDA, the state agency, has a model code. There were fires up in Warwick. There were 2 of them. We've heard about that. We've seen that. It was an older technology. The state put together a task force. The governor put together a task force. They came out with very specific findings on that. and that there was not off-site contamination, even though you've heard the opposite in some literature. It's not true. But the point is that the state learned a lot, and they've proposed changes to the building code. We've already told the Planning Board and Zoning Board, and we'll tell you this tonight, that this application, we will agree to all of those regulations. So for example, Ms. Letterman on the Zoning Board said, well, I want the security cameras, and Zach already had amended the plan, and they had the security cameras. So that Planning Board process was working to go through and analyze not only this project, but to learn, for the Planning Board and Zoning Board to learn as we went along. And where I'm going with this ultimately is your moratorium is very restrictive in that you do not allow the processing of the applications. Okay? On the flip side, you allowed this waiver process for a reason. And we would hope that you would grant a full waiver from the moratorium, but at a minimum, we'd hope you would at least let us process these applications with the Planning and Zoning Board during the pendency of the moratorium, so that way we can continue to provide you the information. Your zoning and planning boards can continue to become educated. You as well could become educated on what we're providing, and hopefully we can have a dialogue that results in a great ordinance and a better project. What we've done in other municipalities that had ordinances or didn't have ordinances, again, we've complied with the NYSERDA model. We've agreed to things like the commissioning report. We've agreed to things like the bonding. We've agreed to things like the peer review, which is why we have Paul here tonight overlooking this application. We've agreed to things like a safety plan, training with the fire department, providing them the knowledge, the experience, the information that they need to understand what exactly this project is. So we have Paul here tonight. If you have some specific questions on fire safety, quite frankly, he's the preeminent expert. He's hired by municipalities. He's hired by project developers. He has the experience. He'd be happy to talk to you tonight or at a work session, however you'd like to do that. But at a minimum, what we would ask is to be able to process these applications with the Planning Board and Zoning Board during the pendency of the moratorium, if not a full waiver.
My other concern moving forward here is, I am concerned, we've had our challenges with New York State government. I'm concerned about a mandate coming from the state government which tells us what we have to do, which I was never good at listening to New York State on what they think we should do. So if anything comes at us where we could create restrictions that control what the state may want to impose on us, that would be a benefit in the long run also.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think that where I started was this is going to happen. This is like cell phones 25 years ago when everyone said they didn't want them, and every speaker tonight read from their cell phone, right? We all have them. This writing is on the wall, and in the past few months, the PSC put out a specific order on battery storage. It is necessary. Without these facilities, what happens is during the peak period, environmentally polluting peaker plants come online to be able to handle that demand. That cannot continue to happen. That will not continue to happen. Either the utilities will spend $2 billion to avoid that situation, or we'll have power outages and an unstable grid, or the alternative is you have private investment putting money into the community to build these types of facilities. They have agreements with the utilities. They have to follow strict protocols to tie into the utilities infrastructure. That's all regulated. That'll be regulated by your town as well as part of that site plan and zoning process. But that's what will ultimately happen. And if it doesn't happen because of the inability to have these facilities sited, then there is that possibility that's been talked about. And I don't know if that helps anyone. You know, there are certain size solar facilities that are regulated by the state. They are exempt from local zoning if they're above a certain size. And I don't know if municipalities prefer that, and I don't even know if developers prefer that. I think the process that we worked through on the Hawthorne project worked very well. And we would hope to be able to continue to do that with the town on this project, because in the grand scheme of things, this is a small project. This is 5 megawatts. It's part of the, the overall goal of the state that has to take place. But it's a relatively small project in a commercial zone, distant from residences, across from a cemetery, next to the power lines, and that's why we think it's a good site. So I understand those aren't your challenges because you're the legislative body, and what we'd ask is to be able to at least make our case to the planning and zoning boards.
I just want to comment, just for me personally. So I know you're here for a variance to basically bypass the moratorium and put your project through to move forward in those approval processes as a hardship because you spent so much time on it. My concern is, if you were allowed to do that, you may end up spending a lot more time on it, a lot more money, where we may ultimately come back and say that we don't want it here. And then in that case, you've created more of a hardship for yourself. The reason I appreciate the moratorium is that it gives us an opportunity to understand these facilities. We don't understand them. They're fairly new to most of us. The technology is ever-changing by the year, it seems. Tesla is coming out with newer models, and oh, that one wasn't so good, but this one's better. Then 2 years later, well, we have a better one. There's so much for us to understand. And there's a lot of residents in our community that have been very outspoken against it, and I think it's important for me, at least, to hear them. And what you're sort of asking us to do today is to say, well, that's all great, you can hear them, but you still, we want you to try to let us through so we can have the dialogue with you. But I just worry, like I said, that if we were to grant it and you were to continue those conversations and those meetings, that you might ultimately end up spending more money, creating more of a hardship.
So I think that's a great point. So I would say two things. One, we filed this application because we want to proceed, because we do believe it's a good site. We want to continue to process. We have put in almost a year's worth of work, significant resources and time, and we're willing to take that risk. We understand that risk. That's the case really with any application, with or without a moratorium. The rule in New York is that a municipality may change the zoning code right up until the time you have substantial construction completed. So every applicant is in essence at risk. But we believe this is so important that we want to go through that process. If we didn't file this application, the way the moratorium works is we were not allowed to process our pending applications, which means this board would be working in basically an echo chamber. You wouldn't have the real-life experience of seeing an application before the zoning board, going through the secret process, going through the analysis of both the zoning board and planning board with the benefit of the building inspector, the planning staff, the planning and zoning board members who are excellent, have asked so many good questions that we've provided additional documentation and will continue to do. So if we hadn't filed this application, there really wouldn't be an opportunity for the board to hear from the public in a real-life situation. And that's why I think having us process, with the understanding you have a moratorium in place, you're ultimately going to adopt regulations. We hope you adopt them sooner than later, and we hope to be able to comply with them. So we're willing to take that risk. We think it's a benefit for both parties to be able to process, and we hope you see fit in that regard.
I'd like to open up to the public. Any members of the community have any questions regarding this project?
How you doing? Carlo Valente Hawthorne. New York State, NYSERDA, Albany, and all the parties involved have put together 15 recommendations. Our new code book, at the earliest, is probably going to come out in December of 2025. I know they're still working on these. They're not set in stone yet, but I would suggest keeping that moratorium until our new code cycle does come out, so we see what those regulations are. It's 2024. There's a bunch of things that can go wrong, that probably do go wrong. We have other things to think about. Right now in the county, we have several in White Plains, as well up Northern County as well, I believe. But just think about it, technology, like Mark said earlier, is ever advancing, but other technology to do harm is also ever advancing. And these battery systems, these BESSs, are susceptible to them. So for example, the one that we already have in town, behind the church, sits adjacent to 2 parkways, some marshland, residential area, train tracks, some ball fields. There's a no outlet in there. This plan right here, that is by the cliffs. Again, You have that one-way in, it's next to a parkway, it's next to a train tracks right across the street. It's adjacent to a building that has government-adjacent businesses that are in there, as well as the Cliffs, which handle, people from all ages, from children to adults. These sites are picked because they make money for those landowners, and for no other reason. Yes, Hawthorne is centrally located, helps everybody out, that's why everybody loves it. But the problem is, we're the test bed. We shouldn't be the test bed. If these things were so great, they would put them on Con Ed's property and let Con Ed deal with anything that might go sideways. We do have a problem with our infrastructure in the state of New York, but that's the infrastructure themselves. And these BSSs that can give us 2 to 4 hours on a good day of some energy is not going to solve the system. The system itself needs to be revamped. And if we want to talk about clean energy, they should open up Indian Point and open up new nuclear plants. There's advanced technology in reusing the rods instead of being a one-time use. That's the way to go. Yes, New York has this mandate. By 2030, they want all of this to happen and go through. But we don't need to be the test bed. I think, like I said, the first thing I said, we should hold off this moratorium and extend it until our new code cycle comes out, until these regulations are in that code cycle, and see what else is in that fire code as well. And then from there, when it does get approval, it does need the fire department's approval, which it does not have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to address this?
Hello again, I'm Jonathan Goldsmith from Hawthorne. I personally believe in battery systems. I have 14.4 kilowatt hours at home. I think it's a great investment, but at the same time, every time I keep reading online about Teslas that catch fire and how much effort it takes for the fire department to put it out, it seems significant. So I'm not really too sure how far the fire suppression systems have come to handle something like this, because I believe a Tesla semi took like 50,000 gallons of water and it only has 900 kilowatt hours, which is about a fifth of what this team is proposing to build. So I think we just need to understand really like how is this going to affect us in the long term, if it's going to be safe to suppress, or if there's better technologies to make sure that there is fire suppressant there, because I can't imagine that our fire department's going to be equipped to handle a 5 megawatt system going up on fire. Not that we want that to happen, but you have to always prepare for the worst.
Thank you.
Taking a chance coming up again, but hopefully you'll be okay. So I'm just going to say that the moratorium was put in place for a reason, just as you illustrated, to become more knowledgeable about it, understand better the risks, and I can't imagine that you've figured it all out by now. There was a reason it was put in place for a time, and that time is to give you guys the time that you need to do all the research you need. Carl, who has come up and spoke each time to talk about from his perspective as a firefighter, the risks associated with it, the idea that you can't put them out if they get on fire and you just have to watch them burn. There was another woman who came here and talked about risk assessment of having more than one in Mount Pleasant itself. I think she was saying that there were 2 maybe in place. So having another one, I'm not sure at this stage why we would entertain it without understanding all the facts. And I guess, why would we as a community or you as a board be willing to go against the moratorium that was put in place just because an applicant is asking for it? I think we have to think about the community there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address the board on this topic?
Yes.
Oh my God, I have such a headache.
Hi, my name's Rich Briganti. I live on 65 Leroy, which is very close to this, to the unit that they want to put in. A couple things I didn't hear about. What is the hardship? the hardship, it's a hardship variance, but I haven't heard, what is the hardship that you're going, that, reason why you want to put this in?
They can answer that when you're done.
Okay. One. Two, sound, cooling, right? They have to cool these things off. They can go up to 85 decibels. A train, freight train, is 80 decibels. These things have to run 24/7, so you can have that constant hum, right? That's something else you have to think about. I'm an electrical engineer. Big battery, right? These things go on fire, they're toxic. It's lithium. Wind blows from west to east, right over the neighborhood. Something else to think about. All right?
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Would you like to answer those questions?
As far as the 15 recommendations by the state, again, we've committed to comply with those, and we'll comply with whatever the New York State Building and Fire Code is. We've already said that, and we have no objection to that. You're not a test bed. These facilities are throughout New York City, they're throughout the state, they're throughout Westchester County. There's 2 in White Plains off the top of my head, 1 in Ossining, that New Leaf's predecessor permitted, 1 in Yorktown, that New Leaf's predecessor permitted. There are others around, I'm just not aware of them because I didn't actually participate.
Do those use the same battery that you're proposing?
Yeah, so the ones in Ossining and the ones in Yorktown are the Tesla Megapacks.
Okay, the same model, same...
I think they're the same model. I believe they're the same model. I believe they're the Tesla Megapack 2s. The utilities are implementing these facilities. There was a comment about that. Con Edison has them in the city. They have a very large facility in the city. They put out RFPs to be able to build these facilities themselves, as are the other utilities. So part of their process through the PSC regulations is that they're installing these facilities and they're having third-party investment that becomes part of the tax base, build these facilities and interconnect pursuant to PSC regulations and the utility approvals. So that is happening.
May I ask a question, sir?
Sure.
I think the previous speaker asked, what is the hardship?
Sure.
And I think the supervisor said that you'd be able to answer that.
I will.
Okay, could you please?
Sure.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna answer 2 parts, because one part was why go against the moratorium that you just enacted. And we had written comments, and I won't go into detail about that moratoriums have to be based on an exigent circumstance. And you put in specifically a waiver provision to be able to address applications. And you put in the moratorium the acknowledgement that this was the only application that was pending. So for your moratorium to withstand scrutiny, you had to have a waiver provision, and that's why we made the application. So I don't think you could say just because just because you enacted a moratorium, you shouldn't grant the waiver because you specifically put in paragraph 3, which was the whole waiver. And as part of the waiver application process and criteria, you included a provision of hardship. And the way it's written is it talks about the hardship to the property owner. So we answered that question. The hardship to the property owner is they're not getting the value of the lease that they signed with us. But we also put in the hardship in a more broader sense. And part of the hardship is the need for these facilities, the need to make the grid more resilient, the need to eliminate the environmental polluting peaker plants, the need to meet the state's goals pursuant to the Climate Act and all of the PSC regulations. And then with respect to the applicant, we documented in Zach's letter the fact that they've invested over $500,000 in this project, $550,000, which includes a deposit to the utility company for the interconnection. So these facilities are expensive to install. They require a lot of capital. The way the state has set this up is it's drawing capital from the private markets to be able to install these facilities, as opposed to the utility companies paying $2 billion to upgrade the grid, which would go into the ratepayer base. And the state has laid this all out in various PSC orders. I'd be happy to send them to you. We cited to some of them. But the point of the of the hardship is that the way the moratorium waiver provision, it talks about the hardship to the property owner, which are the lease payments, the use of their property. I think the supervisor made comments earlier about how property owners are allowed to use their property pursuant to, reasonable regulation. The hardship to the state, to the residents, to the utility grid is that this will be delayed, and we don't know how long that would be without being able to process the application, which we've already processed for nearly 6 months. And then the hardship to the applicant specifically is the amount of investment that they made in good faith pursuant to a set of regulations that they relied on and were approved upon with the Hawthorne facility, and not being able to at least process the application is a significant hardship. So I hope that answered your specific question. As far as the sound, yeah, there is a train that goes by, but the facility will have to comply with your sound code, and that's something, again, that I think will be valuable to let your experts, your planning board, your zoning board, your professional planner, your building department, to be able to look at those site-specific issues in a real-world instance. I don't think, the amount of sound is relevant for the legislative body, but you will ultimately enact regulations. You already have sound regulations for any use in your code, and we'll comply with that. But with that, I would like to ask Paul to come up and say a few words, because I think it would be helpful. There were some comments that I think are worthy of responding to as far as safety.
Good evening, Paul Rogers with ESRG. We are fire protection experts. We work on projects throughout the United States, Canada, Hawaii, but we have projects that are currently up and running right now throughout the United States in different states. We also have ones in New York City that we manage managing from a fire protection point of view, where we go and check the functionality on a yearly basis to make sure all the fire protection systems are working. So there have been some, when I was with the New York City Fire Department, we had approved projects that are still currently running today in New York City, 3 in Brooklyn, 2 in Queens, at least 5 during my time with the New York City Fire Department that we approved, and with no incidents at all, they have been up and running in New York City. And as I said, I heard one person said that this is the test case, but they are already up and running, and especially the Tesla Megapack, a lot of the systems that we work on are the Tesla Megapack. We're very happy when we see the Tesla Megapack, because we know the testing results that came out of that as a result of the fire protection and the fire code that they're required to do. Another gentleman spoke about the Tesla and the 50,000 gallons of water being used. The nice part about battery energy storage system, as opposed to any other product that uses batteries, is battery energy storage systems are required to go through rigorous testing and validation testing to prove that if there was a failure within the cells, that they would not propagate outside the unit. Not only did Tesla not propagate outside the unit, they never propagated outside the module. There's about 51 modules in the Tesla Megapack. So they purposely failed the system to see the propagation within the system itself. As you heard, a cascading event may take place where you get from cell to cell, module to module, until the whole unit goes up. The goal of that test is to make sure it doesn't go outside the unit. But as I mentioned before, Tesla never even went outside the actual module, so it stopped right at the module. That is something that is a very rigorous test. It's done by a national recognized testing laboratory. When it first came out, a lot of people complained about it, but these are what the New York State Fire Code adopted. It's UL 9540A for the record and for the people that are home. But this test is something that is the linchpin of safety, to validate safety and to show that if there was a failure within the cell or numerous cells, that it would not propagate outside the unit. Sorry, I'm just going through my notes here. So someone mentioned if they were to actually go on fire, and it would be toxic, and I can tell you, as a New York City firefighter, every fire that I went to was toxic, whether it's a structural fire, car fire, or anything else to do with any type of fire. So fires are toxic no matter what, and there's not much that we can do about it. One of the good things that we we see about this, Tesla purposely went above and beyond the testing of UL 9540, and they physically put it on fire. They actually said, we're going to put it on fire because we want to see how far it would go. Tesla is broken down into two sections, the cabinet itself. In between is a brake, and that's called an HMI, human machine interface. So they actually put it on fire and they forced it into a propagating event, but it never went past the HMI area. So the whole other side of the Tesla actually never went on fire. That was their own testing. They did it without anyone prompting them to do it. But this is all in a report that could be made available to anyone here on the board that wants to read it. It's a very extensive report, but it explains actually the work that Tesla did. And other places are doing it now too. They set the standard for other people to start to do that. So you'll see other ones that are coming in on that. Yeah, and also these batteries that we see, or the cells that are inside the Tesla, they are very similar to the cells that we see in electric vehicles that are traveling all over the city or all over the town, that are located in schools and charging areas, in businesses, and wherever the case may be. I was just in a place where they had an underground garage with a charging station inside of it, which is a nightmare in the event if there were to have a fire in that event, because it's underground, very hard for the fire service. And also, you know, taking a look at the fire protections on that end. But the nice part about this one is this, again, has that feature of the UL 9540A showing the validation of the propagating or stopping the propagating of the actual event to stay within the unit. So there has to be very little interaction as far as the fire service is concerned.
Is that we just had some research sent to us, is that the Megapack 2XL model?
That is the Megapack 2XL, yes.
With respect to, I'm a retired lieutenant from Chinatown, so I went to a couple fires too. The byproducts of combustion with this unit, are they toxic? Does this require evacuation? Does it?
Yeah, great question. Great question. So, in all my years working as a lieutenant in the hazmat, I never did an evacuation. I spoke to many people throughout the New York City Fire Department, which is a very dense environment, how many times they did an evacuation. And I spoke to some pretty busy chiefs. None of them could give me one instance where they gave an evacuation for some pretty heavy-duty fires that they had. In the case of this here, we have, I've responded to the one in Warwick. I responded to the one in Chamont. I responded to one out in LA, and all of them, not one person reported getting sick from any smoke from the actual fire event that took place. As you know, when you do an evacuation, it is extremely difficult to try to get people out of their house. You have infirm people that they can't move. The best thing, if the incident commander really needed to do it, if they felt that they needed, would be just a shelter in place if they actually needed. But again, I highly unlikely we get to that area. I can never say never. But as far as getting on fire like that, because all the layers of safety to prevent the fire have to be compromised in order for us to actually get to a fire event. And there's a lot of layers of safety that are associated with these battery energy storage systems.
Thank you.
I have just one more question for the attorney, please. You mentioned financially that your New Leaf Energy has a lease, so they are not the property owners of the 10-acre site, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so they have a lease with who is the property owner, please?
Oh, I would have to look in my file. I don't remember the exact name, but it's the owner of the 115 Wall Street property. There are two properties up there. There are separate owners.
Yes.
I think at one time they were in common ownership. They are no longer, from my understanding, and we have the lease with the property owner of 115 Wall Street.
So it was New Leaf that actually sought out the property and sought out to establish the lease and to put the facility there. It's not the owner of the property.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. You've clarified things for me.
I know we put that in our moratorium. I just have such a hard time with the word hardship, you know, from the perspective of it's a speculative investment, right? I know, and I appreciate that you put a lot of money into it, but it's a speculative investment. on a very new technology. People invest millions of dollars in new technologies all the time. There's no guarantee. You know, if I bought shares of NVIDIA stock and the stock went down, I'd love to be able to claim a hardship myself, but I can't. It's a speculative investment. And then around the need, I mean, we don't have rolling blackouts right now, right? May we in the future? Yes, but it's to see it as an immediate hardship, immediate need, I'm not convinced.
So let me answer two questions. One, the reason it's a hardship is because zoning, the common phrase is zoning is in derogation of the common law, meaning that people are allowed to do with their land what they wish. And going back to the Supreme Court, Euclidean zoning, Supreme Court said municipalities for the common good may have reasonable zoning plans, but you have to be able to have variances. You have to be able to have exceptions. Municipalities cannot say no, no, no. You have to have a process. So what you put in place was a moratorium that, quite frankly, is more strict than most moratoriums that I ever see, because you did not allow the processing. One of the things we asked for was a 3-month moratorium. You went with 6. One of the things we asked for was the ability to process. You didn't grant that either, but what you granted was a waiver. So you created criteria, and one of the criteria is we show you what our hardship is, and that's what our hardship is. Our hardship is we're not allowed to use the land, even though we're only a lessee, we still have property rights to the land as a lessee. We have just as many sticks in the bundle, so to speak. We're allowed to use the land subject to reasonable zoning. So that's what the hardship is. As far as the need, I would say you really have to look then deep into the PSC orders. And there were a number of them. I'd be happy to send them to you. But there was specifically one this past June where the PSC laid out the need specifically for battery energy storage systems. There has been, and there continues to be, a need that's been enumerated throughout other PSC orders, which includes all different types of distributed energy resources, which means not the peaker power plants that are in underprivileged communities or faraway communities that are damaging those communities from a health and safety standpoint, but bringing the energy closer to the areas where it's needed. And one of the things where it's needed is where we can tie into the feeder lines. And that's why where there are feeder lines in this area that we can tie into. So when you see these facilities, they're going in areas where there are feeder lines. When you see solar, they're going in areas where there's 20 acres where you can put in a community solar project and have enough land to have enough solar panels. But that's not what we're asking for here. We're asking for a different type of distributed energy resource. And under the PSC order from June, it specifically goes through the exact need for this type of distributed energy resource to be able to stabilize the grid, make the grid more efficient, be able to incorporate renewable energy, be able to make the grid non-reliant on carbon, and also to be able to close down those peaker plants.
Thank you.
Not to interrupt you, we could talk about this all night.
Yeah.
We appreciate all the information. We may want to reach out to you at a work session possibly.
Thank you.
To get some of these details down. We have no intention of closing this public hearing tonight.
We understand.
If the board so wishes, we will carry this on to the... Sure.
Come on up.
I'm Cam Amanetto. I live here in Valhalla. And my question is very simple. How many projects that you have within a 2-mile, 3-mile radius from a major water supply? If you screw up with that water supply, you're messing up not only here, but the supply that's going into New York City. So how many projects that you have in a 2-mile distance from a major water supply like the Kensico Water District? The answer's none.
I'll speak to the board.
The answer's none.
I don't want to really go back and forth, Mr. Supervisor, but the answer is that the facility is not polluting to the water supply, okay?
If you have a major problem and you have a blow up in that facility, you have major chemical going into the air, which is going to burn for a long time.
So
all you need is one.
I don't think those facts are correct, and we can certainly provide you that documentation. I can tell you the one in Yorktown off the top of my head is right next to a lake, is right next to a wetlands. When Yorktown looked at it, they specifically were satisfied about the fact that there's not this effluent that comes out of these facilities. That's just not the case. So this is the type of information that I mentioned before that sometimes is incorrect, and we'd be happy to provide the data to show that. Specifically, the fires that the governor's task force looked at, they confirmed, and you can go and look at those reports yourself, they confirmed that there was no off-site contamination of the type that this is being
I would
described
be
here.
interested to find out if there is pollution coming out of it. How far can it travel? Does it dissipate as it's traveling? Does it fall to the ground? That's the things I'd like to know more about.
Sure, we can provide you those reports that I think Paul alluded to earlier.
And by the way, a lake is not the water supply size of what you got.
No, I understand. I'm not really here to debate the issue because it's not something that
You
comes out of
brought it
these
up.
facilities.
You're making a comparison.
Okay.
We'll get more details.
Thank you for
on
your
this.
time.
And the other thing is, you're asking for, I don't know, 6,000 square feet, a little bit more over there, correct? Do you want to do the
Yes,
math,
that's
or do
correct.
you wanna- All right.
No, just
6,000 square feet. You only need 3,000. Why are you asking for 6? It seems to me you want to bypass whatever the project is going forward. Since you got the 6, you can expand up on it.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
No, there are regulations that would have to be followed.
But they still got the property.
If you look at our site plan, the Tesla Megapacks take up a portion of the compound, then there's a gravel area, then we have a security fence, and we need to have access around the security fence. So I think it's about 6,700 square feet of that fence, then about another 1,500 square feet of the little access path that comes off the parking lot. We're not taking up any parking spaces, just to be able to have access to the facility. But that's all it is. If you look on the site plan, it's pretty clear.
Well, if you have pollution, you don't know where that wind's going to blow it, so consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Question also, just to the point of where the pollution might fall, if there was a fire on a rainy day, if you could provide any feedback around that, not right now, but when you send us info, you don't have to do it right now.
Yeah,
I
this,
think we're gonna come to a work session.
we'll provide that
Thank you.
information.
Like I said before, we'd like to carry this on to our December 10th town board meeting. Resolution 45524 will allow us to keep this public hearing open until then.
Thank you very much for your time this evening, and have a very happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, you as well.
Thanks.
And I'll make a motion for approval, please.
Motion by Danielle,
That's second.
second by Tom, all in favor?
Good night.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I'd like to thank all our department heads for being here tonight. I don't want to keep you in here any longer. I don't believe we have any serious questions for you on the rest of the agenda, so again, thank you all for coming this evening.
Thank you, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yes,
Take care.
thank you for your
Thanks.
dedication. Have a great week and enjoy Thanksgiving.
You folks, thanks for coming out. We appreciate your input. Thanks so much.
Do we have one more public hearing? Why not make it 4?
No.
Why is it just one more?
I'm going to make my birthday.
Thank you.
Take
Happy
care, everyone.
Thanksgiving.
Same to you.
Thank you.
Moving on to less technical issues. Supervisor's report, authorization to reappoint Theodore Lai. Ted Lai, right? Lai.
Yep.
Yes.
Board of Assessment review for the term expiring September 30th, 2029, and we thank Ted for his previous service to the Board of Assessment review.
Move for approval, please.
Motion by Lori,
Second.
second by Tom, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I have the receiver of taxes report on file, business from the floor. I think we've all had enough business from the floor.
Are you coming up for business of the floor?
Moving on to our town clerk's report, Emily.
My computer just...
I hope this is short. Town Clerk's Report, Town Board Meeting, November 26, 2024. Public hearings for the preliminary 2025 budget to consider a local law authorizing the town to exceed the 2% tax cap, and to consider a hardship variance from the battery storage moratorium submitted by New Leaf Energy. Received and filed the notice of annual election from the following fire districts: Hawthorne, Pleasantville, Thornwood, Valhalla, and Newcastle. And that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to council's reports. Councilman Saliano, you got the night off.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I just want to say happy Thanksgiving to everybody in the town, and thanks for coming out. We appreciate your input. It is a great town. We have a lot to be thankful for, and enjoy your families. Thank you very much. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Councilwoman Zano.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I too have, I guess, the night off. I don't know if we call it the night off after 3 public hearings, but just want to wish everybody a very happy Thanksgiving. And to echo Tom's sentiments, thank you all for coming out and giving us your feedback. It's much appreciated.
Thank you. Councilman Saraceno, you got some work tonight?
Oh, man. And I forgot it was Thanksgiving. I told you. Anyway. Okay. Starting off with Resolution 457-24 for our comptroller's memo. I will go through expenditures. Beginning in the Justice Court, we have payments for court stenographer services, court interpreters, and a court clerk holiday meeting totaling $6,318. Out of central mailing, our fall newsletter for printing and mailing was $6,536.58. Department of Public Safety, various seminars and training as they relate to our police chief, totaling $11,760.29. These are conferences and training seminars that will improve Chief Oliva's ability to do his job as he does so well. Senior citizen trips, we have our coach bus for a trip up to Bethlehem, and that's not Israel. $2,230. Well, it is Christmas almost, so you never know.
It's Pennsylvania.
Yes, I should have said out or down to Bethlehem, correct. $2,230. And again, those trips are subsidized by the people who are taking them, who pay. Recreation Center, payments of $1,813.08 for card member services. Adult programs, our trap shooting course for the instructor payment, and umpires for our softball programs are $6,342. For youth programs, various soccer and karate activities, $5,900.80. Capitol building, town hall, HVAC project to Clean Air Quality Service, Inc. This is a large item, $570,424.10. And this is HVAC upgrades that will be made to the town hall building and the community center up by the pool, which will ultimately yield in a much more efficient system and cost savings as time progresses. The Capital Kensico Road Fund has a payment for a TV at the Legion Hall for $467.99. Old Farm Hill Water, payment for engineering consulting services to Charles Manganaro for $13,907.
Kids.
Kensico Capital Projects, a treatment pump parts, $1,389.04. Also for Kensico Capital Projects, we have various supplies and materials, including pipe fittings and clamps. We have a engineering services for modification to Charles Manganaro as well, and piping and treatment modification as part of the construction project to Laws Construction, totaling out of this fund $40,518.30. Mount Pleasant Consolidated Sewer District, payments of $4,006.24. For the Joint Water District Fund, payment of $909.37. Kensico Water, Ross Valve Service, $5,668. And in Trust and Agency, we have 5 items for consulting, paying to Clear Consulting on various properties, totaling $3,600. Total expenses on this week's comptroller memo is $680,401.75. I'd like to move for approval.
Motion by Mark,
Second.
second by Tom. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. And on to Resolution 458-24,
We are requesting authorization to enter into a 3-year contract with the firm PKF O'Connor Davies LLP for their professional auditing services. It would cover all related audits for the 2024 through 2026 fiscal years. For these years, it is expected that the town will need to have several types of audits completed. And this includes the town, the library, federal funds, as well as DOT audits. And for this year's contract, there's also a additional expense of $2,500 for GASB, which is Governmental Accounting Standards Board reporting. So the total amount of this contract is $109,000. Again, it covers 24 through 26 fiscal years. I move for approval.
Motion by Mark,
Second.
second by Lori. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor, and for all residents, the details of that contract and all of our expenses are always found on our agendas, so you can find those online. And I'd like to wish everybody a happy and safe Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Smalley?
I'm off the hook also. However, I just want to mention that on Friday, December 6th at 4:45 will be the town tree lighting here at Town Hall. It's a great event for families. There's a special visitor that comes to see all the children. So please come out if you can. And happy Thanksgiving to everyone here in town and beyond. Thank you.
Our town attorney, I don't believe we have any legal issues.
Nothing more.
And schedule of meetings, or our next work session is December 3rd at 7 p.m. Next public meeting, December 10th at 7 p.m. If there be no further business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Tom,
Second.
second by Danielle. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.